Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors and staff. Welcome to our March Agenda Forum. Agenda Forums are specifically for agenda items which are to be considered by Council at the next ordinary meeting of Council. Agenda Forums are not decision-making forums. They provide an opportunity for councillors to be equally informed and seek additional information on matters prior to the presentation of such matters at the next ordinary council meeting for formal consideration and decision. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed. The recording will also be archived and made available on the City's website after the meeting. If you choose to participate in a meeting during public statement, public question time or deputation time, it is assumed that your consent is given for the audio to be recorded. Please keep your comments respectful to Council and other members of the community, and visual images of the public will not be captured. Okay, leave of absence, Mr CEO, are there any? Be none?
None, thank you.
Apologies, I have an apology from Councillor McCulloch, who is at the Walgett State Council. Declarations of financial proximity interest and interest affecting impartiality.
Mr Mayor, I have two. First one's from Councillor Zanino in relation to item 13.7, that's the Midland Oval Urban Design Guidelines. He's declared an impartiality as his business partners own land on the Crescent in Midland adjoining the site. Councillor Catalano has expressed a proximity interest in item 3.3, that's a proposed subdivision to the northwest of Cranwood Avenue in Vivash, and in that she is a member of the Blackadder Catchment Group who have made a submission on the matter, Mr Mayor.
Councillor.
Actually, I need to correct that because I think it's an impartiality.
I think you're correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just while you're. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other declarations, councillors or staff? Be none. That takes us to 5.1, which is questions for which due notice has been given. I have questions from Mr Alan Rogers. Mr Rogers, you've seen those answers?
I have indeed, Mr Mayor.
Thank
you
you.
very much for allowing me.
Okay, that takes us now to questions without notice, and Mr Rogers.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I'm just being told that I'm doing something wrong.
No, you're fine.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're good to go.
Thank you very much. As you are aware, all councillors, I did write to the City of Swan and to all councillors with regards to the proposed reinstallation of security patrols within Allenbrook area. It said that they were going to question all residents or a lot of residents within the area to find out their thoughts. When I was a very young boy, I was told never to assume because it makes an arse out of you and me. Unfortunately, I assumed one of the councillors may have picked up a phone and said, "What else can we help you with?" Nothing was heard. I have one other question that I noticed in the minutes with regards to the security patrols which have been reinstated within the Vines area. In your minutes, it says, with regards to the company that are doing the patrols, this is done by the two owners of the security company because they did the first month to find out how they were going to travel. House checks. Residents have approached our staff and indicated that they would be away on holidays for an extended period of time and requested that their houses be patrolled. Staff developed a spreadsheet and ensured that these houses received extra patrols during their shifts. Now, I don't know how many of you councillors read that, how many would agree with it, but that's something that is totally off my running sheet. Would anybody like to give me a comment on that, please? Sorry, Mr Mayor, the question's too hard. I understand that.
No, I'm just thinking if you might just like to rephrase it in terms of the question. It was more of a statement.
The statement in your minutes stated that these people were going to add additional patrols to the residents within the Vines area when they go on holidays. They would advise them that they're going on holidays, and they would say, OK, we can come around and check on your house additionally. It's in your minutes.
Okay, yeah, no, I think I thought you were saying they're another service being offered by the security company to individual householders.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it? Or is that part of the $130 that you anticipate my fellow residents paying in Ellenbrook?
Mr Bishop, you could probably answer that one.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, it has been part of the service arrangement, that's the security patrols previously and with the Vines now, that residents can contact the service provider, the security patrol, and request the patrols keep a particular eye out on properties that are vacant during when they're away overseas, etc. That has been part of the arrangement previously, and it's part of the contract arrangement and the service that's provided by Braven in the Vines now.
So I don't really understand how you can justify a security company which has got a website similar to one that James Bond has and provides absolutely nothing of information to you other than, look how good I am. You can't even see where their patrol is, their control room is. Doesn't give you their authorisation for it either. So that's the way that our security patrols are going to work, on an individual basis, where Billy Bloggs at number 5 is going to contact them and say, hey mate, I'm going away on holidays, can you run around my place a couple of extra times? How can you justify that?
Well, it's not an extra charge, but...
And not at an extra charge to them, but we are then going to be restricted at the times that we're getting. Are we not?
Well, at this point in time, there's no extra patrols, but it's just
it
an
is.
add-on service.
The gentleman just told you there was.
No. Well, Mr Bishop has said that that's part of the service and part of the contract, that if a resident is going away, they can notify the security service they would be away so that they can pay extra attention to it when they're on patrol.
OK, if that's going to be the point, I'll make it my endeavour to make sure that every resident in Ellenbrook is wholly aware of this, and how will that operate then?
That's fine.
You know, as I said to you in my first letter to you, I was the one who started the security patrols and guards at the brand new Parliament House in Canberra. Dead easy, because you're inside a big fence. Outside a fenced area, you've got absolutely no control whatsoever of doing anything. These patrol officers have got their name, a pencil and a paper. That's all they've got. That's their only authority. Okay. They cannot make a decision on what to do.
That's right.
How do they contact their head office during their times of work?
Well, that's operational for the security company. I'd suggest they've got radios and mobile phones, but
they have a radio which can contact the control room.
Yeah, Mr Rogers, we're actually sort of getting into debate on this item, so it is for questions.
Well, it's for questions. I've asked the question.
Yeah, well, if it's an operational issue with the security company, that's a question for them. But at this point,
I can't answer that. I can only question the council.
Neither can anyone here in terms of their operational procedures inside their own operations, Mr Rogers.
But you own the contract.
No, at this point in time, there's no contract left.
You own the contract with the Vines area, which is the one I've been speaking about, prior to you reinstating the one at Ellenbrook.
Well, at this point in time, there's no contract for Ellenbrook, and that's what we're dealing with today, Mr Rogers.
So it doesn't matter what you write in your minutes?
Well, the minutes are the minutes as they were recorded. Thank you, Mr Rogers.
Thank you very much for your time.
You. Any other questions for which due notice has not been given? None. We move on now to Part B, is deputations. And Mr Rogers, your deputation first on the Ellenbrook Security Patrols.
Yeah, thank you again. Once again, I come back to the...
and Mr Rogers, you have 5 minutes too, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. once again, I come back to the provision of security patrols within the Ellenbrook area. As I said to one of the councillors here, why don't we put up a big sign out the front of Ellenbrook to say that this is quite a dangerous area, we need extra patrols. The police do patrols all day. I know they've only got 2 motor cars and 2 members of the police in each car. You've got all of your staff, which are the extra eyes on the street that's advertised all over the place. Can't they see anything? Now, the one in the proposal I think you want to do is to do it either from 2 o'clock until 7 o'clock where you've got nobody working. That's the most opportune time for people to run around and see what else they can do. I've told you about the markings on the fence, about how people justify where they can get whatever they want. Those markings in a lot of places have now been removed. That is from a policeman who I will not divulge his name. He doesn't work here, but he's in a totally different group from the extra Mr. Joe Plott area. So I'd just like you to definitely have a really good think about wasting time and effort and causing hassle with the residents of the Ellenbrook area and imposing a cost which you don't know yet. So that'll have to come back to council again. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Mayor. If I may, just one other point.
Yeah, you've still got plenty of time.
Mr. Foley, I congratulate you on your term. I wish you all the very best for your retirement. Good luck, and you won't know what the hell you've done with yourself when you retire. What will I do now? You'll have a hell of a lot of time involved. I've had 21 years of it, mate. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Before you go, there might be questions for councillors.
I'm sorry, yes?
There might be. Councillors, any questions of Mr. Rogers? Councillor Kiley.
Alan, do you have any expertise in this area at all?
As I said to you in my first letter, my expertise was I was employed in Wormald Security for 3 years after my 20 years service in the Navy. After I did from 1960 through 1980, I joined Wormald Security, I think it was beginning of January in 1981. And that's when I was given the task of selling guards and patrols, safes and vaults. The guards were easy to sell because they're a stationary person. He's got a specific area to do. Patrols are very hard because you've got to get a person to do what you want whilst he's out there. There's nobody standing behind him watching what he does. The only way you can do that is to put a GPS in their car and you can then know where that particular person is, how long he stayed there and where he did during that time. Not a problem. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Richardson.
I just want to say thank you for your email to the councillors. I have acknowledged that, and you know, I know that you've got that experience behind you. And I'm just wondering if you'd be able to provide us some advice as per your email if we contact you.
By all means, I'm quite happy.
Thank you.
The only trouble is I fly to Singapore on Friday morning. I'm up there looking for a case of Corona.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, next is 13.6, the Midland Activity Centre Design Guidelines. Mr. Irwin speaking on behalf of the Midland Society. Mr. Irwin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The guidelines which are before you are an important document because they will direct many of the aspects of development over the coming decades in Midland. You cannot build sound structure on dodgy foundations, and I'm concerned that these guidelines have dodgy foundations. They haven't really looked at the historical and heritage basis of the town of Midland. They're treating it as a modern greenfield town. There's no real recognition here. Basically, Midland was founded at junctions of railways, junctions of highways, and junctions of rivers. The junction of the highways forms triangles, the junction of the rivers forms triangles, and that first triangle was the first subdivision in 1891, at the heart of which, of course, is Midland Oval. And that is the heart of Midland. That was the first subdivision, and of course, that includes Great Eastern Highway running along the south side and Great Northern Highway running up diagonally. And that triangle is really the heart of Midland. In these guidelines, it's being referred to as Midland West End, I think. There's no recognition, as I can see in these guidelines, that this is a gold rush period town. It's a railway town. It was a boom town for 2 senses, and that because these guidelines have been written in that way, the likely result is that we will lose all these heritage assets and the character of the town of Midland, which has already been severely damaged with planning blight. This is going to create more planning blight. The report is full of contradictions, inconsistencies, motherhood statements. There's no real consideration of the character of the place, of the streetscape, or of its potential for urban renewal. The guidelines appear to be written as if we're going to just bulldoze what's here and start fresh with 6-storey or whatever. These guidelines might suit a greenfield development such as Ellenbrook or Joondalup, but they're not written as if they're written with anyone who's really visited Midland or has a keen interest in urban design in Midland. There's, like, as I say, no recognition of the heritage character. And when you look at successful urban regeneration around Perth, you can look at areas like Leederville, Fremantle, and Maylands now as well, and even Bassendean. And what's happening is that it's the existing structure, the existing fabric, which is being revitalised, re-inhabited, redeveloped in the real sense of what the word means, to redevelop, regenerated, not demolished and destroyed and replaced. So this is what I don't think is really picked up at all in these guidelines. I think it's very important for a town which has so much history and heritage. Yes, it's not as old as Guildford, but its birth over 120 years ago is very significant. It's a town unlike any others. I've attended today a talk by Bobby Oliver on the railway workshops. This town has all sorts of significance. There's all sorts of wasted opportunities. That why do we not yet have, I know it's not, I can't blame council, but we don't yet have a railway heritage museum. We don't yet have a proper university in Midland. We only have really one school of medicine forensics.
You have 1 minute left, Mr. Owen.
Thank you. The heritage provisions in these guidelines appear to be limited to individual properties. There's talk about heritage of individual properties that might have, for instance, state registration, state heritage registration. But there's no talk of the streetscape, of the townscape, which is what we have here. We're talking about a town. It's not just made up of individual buildings, it's a town as a whole. And these guidelines, to me, are full of shortcomings, and I would suggest that they should be redrafted. And it's not enough to say that they were prepared by Hassel, because, as I say, the foundations are dodgy. These were prepared not by Hassels, but on the basis of a brief that was given to them by council, which was already pushing a council agenda, which appears to have been, for many years, to destroy and create planning blight in Midland.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Irwin. I really appreciate your thoughts as always. I'd like to just ask you a couple of questions on the things you spoke about in your deputation. The first is the heart of Midland, the triangle. You described it being an intersection of Great Eastern Highway and Great Northern Highway. Where is the other intersection of that heart precinct?
The other end of it is the eastern end, which is now Lloyd Street, but that was the original Swan Location 7, which was the first slab of land which was first subdivided in 1891.
Thank you. A further question is, you mentioned motherhood statements. Could you elaborate on that and potentially, if possible, give me an example of what you mean?
I mean that a motherhood statement, it colloquially refers to a statement that sounds good but doesn't mean very much. It's a statement with consoling words, but it doesn't really have, if it doesn't have any real any real meaning, it's there to sound good, but doesn't actually really give you anything.
Okay. Thank you. And furthermore, I'd just like to follow on with that. I'd like to ask you, could that area be considered a certain precinct, and is there a historical term for that precinct that would work?
Well, I think, as I say, I don't see the recognition of the heritage streetscape, the heritage gold rush period architecture, and which are those primary streets. Helena Street, of course, I didn't mention, but that's part of it as well.
Yep.
That I think they should be defined as that's really the core of Midland, that's central Midland. It's not Midland West End. I think what's happening, planning is tending to take the focus of Midland to the east, towards Cale Street, towards Midland Gate, and therefore we're sort of being encouraged to think of Old Midland as not really existing anymore. It's sort of like, let's pretend it's already gone and we can ignore it. What I'm saying is it actually has vast potential for tourism, for rebirth of retail, and don't forget that these are local business owners who own these businesses in the old part of town, whereas the new part of town, Midland Gate, is owned by corporations. They're not local to Midland. So what we're doing, I think, in terms of planning, we're doing a disservice to the original retail properties and owners, and the result is planning blight, and you can see it when you look around.
Thank you. And just one more question. I'm not sure if you can help me with this, but I know you have good local history knowledge. The old suburb of West Midland, do you know when that was subdivided?
No, I don't.
Okay. But it was known as West Midland, what is now Woodbridge.
Yeah, I think...
in my childhood it was.
As I understand it, the south part of across the railway was railway workers' cottages, so probably coincided with the railway workshops, probably from 1904 on. There's the north side, Woodbridge, across this side of the... Sorry, the other... north side of the highway is generally more, I think, certainly post-First War, and largely, I think a lot of it's post-Second War.
Okay. So thank you very much for answering those questions. I really
appreciate it. I'm sure Stephen
it.
Tan would know more about it than I do.
Councillor Johnson, you've got a question?
Questions for him later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Irwin, to give guidance to Council as to what to do with this document, could you advise what changes you'd recommend making to it?
I think it's a case of going back to the drawing board and, as I say, building on good foundations. So I think you have to actually understand the place, the structure and the history and the heritage of the place properly. And it doesn't appear to me, reading these guidelines, that that's been done. They appear to be, almost... I think I used the phrase when I spoke about this last month. They appear to be generic. They're almost out of a generic template for writing guidelines. They don't appear to be specific to where we are. I hope I'm not being rude to whoever wrote them, but that's how they read.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. Last time you were giving a deputation, I asked that whether you saw the potential for Midland for a mix of old and new. Certainly. And I think you agreed that that's the vision that you have. So I wonder if you could perhaps just come up the first question is, what sort of things do you think about when you think about that mix of old and new?
Well, that's probably could be a very long answer. I'll try not to go too deeply into it, but I think it's a case where, again, if you look, for example, look at Maylands. They've done a major redevelopment in that triangle or that square directly across from the railway line. They've actually built multi-storey apartment block in behind the facades or the original buildings. So they've kept the original street shop fronts and shops. They've still got but they might have truncated their blocks somewhat, and that was so that development is actually sitting in behind the old retail, and behind it, and it doesn't jump out at you. It's a couple of stories higher. So if the old shops are typically 2 stories, as they often were with retail, ground floor accommodation often, or offices above, then this is another couple of stories above that behind them. So I think that's one example that it's worked very well in Maylands, but there's many other ways you can do it. And of course, often you need to do infill, and that in itself is always a question of, it's like if you've got a missing tooth and you've got to replace that tooth, do you use a gold tooth so it jumps out at you, or do you put a white tooth in so it looks like all the other teeth? I mean, I'm trying to use dentistry as an allegory here, but I think it's a question of judgment and balance in how you do infill development. I don't think you should necessarily do pastiche. I think it might need to be quite clearly modern and significantly different as per the Borough Charter. When you talk about heritage development, the Borough Charter would say it should read as of its time, not pretend to be of the past. I know there's many councillors here who've got their own experience of developments, but...
Further question, Councillor Catalano?
Yes, thanks. In respect to these guidelines, do you think that there should be more text about the history of Midland and more text about the story of it, and more about that there's these heritage buildings that relate to that past history, and that they should be retained, and that the development that is incorporated around them should kind of work with that streetscape and those particular buildings? Is that what you think these guidelines should have, more of that context?
Absolutely. I think that's what I'm referring to with saying we need strong foundations. The foundations need to be there because many people may not know just what's really going on. And I'm thinking again of the talk I heard from Bobby Oliver today, Professor Dr. Oliver up at the library on talking about she made the same point that you've got to understand the history and the place and interpret it too, and then if you don't put that information out there, then how would a developer coming in, cold as it were, how would that developer know all these issues? You have to have it somewhere available. If you're doing guidelines, you've got to have guidelines that guide. They can't be left, to let you feel your way around in the dark. Their guidelines must give you guidance, and it has to be valuable guidance based on good information, good foundations.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin. Mr. Irwin, are there any other questions, Councillor? Because we've got quite a few more deputations, and this one seems to be dragging out. So, Mr. Irwin, if you'd like to move on to 13.7, if you've got anything new to add from your previous deputation a month ago, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, again, the point needs to be made. We need good foundations, and I think my concern with 13.7 Midland Oval redevelopment guidelines are that they are based on the presumption of the MORM recommendations, and I think the MORM recommendations were consistently not accepted by the community, do not represent what the community needs or wants, and to go ahead with guidelines that build on the MORM recommendations is to ignore the realities of what the community has been telling Council for over 25 years, through every reference group, every consultation opportunity, through special meetings of electors. So really it's hard to comment on the Midland Oval redevelopment guidelines without referring to the basis of the MORM, which sits underneath everything that's shown in those guidelines. So you can't really separate the two things out. It's intrinsic in that the assumption of these guidelines is that Midland Oval is no longer there. So there's a miscellaneous bunch of buildings that seem undefined but sort of built all over where the Oval used to be. So how can you speak about Midland Oval redevelopment? It's not there to be redeveloped, it's gone, it's destroyed. So I think that was the point I made. My first submission on this issue probably 15 years ago. It's a tautology to call it redevelopment when it's actually destruction.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Thank you again for your deputation, Mr. Irwin. I'd just like to ask you, following on from your comments, that Midland Oval is no longer there. We are where we are now. How can we move forward with the community to create a space with what we have now?
That's a great question, and I think that really does need serious consideration and serious attention, because I think it's vital we don't make any more of a disaster out of what we're doing, and that this vital community asset is protected. So how we go about it would obviously very much depend on how the council is able to open up to community views on this matter, and on that we don't have a great track record up to now, but I'm hoping that would be how we could move forward, so we move forward together and bring prosperity and vitality and encouragement and life back to this town, because it's a town that deserves to have it. And it's at the moment, if you go up there and look at Midland Oval, we had an event there, the Carols by Candlelight last year. It's got a road running across it. It's got a great big cyclone mesh fence running across it. The grass hasn't been watered. It's all looking very sad. There are holes dug at random in the velodrome. The whole place. These are on your municipal inventory. These places. The velodrome's on your municipal inventory. The Oval's on your municipal inventory. But I don't see much concern for the heritage and the way it's being treated.
Thank you, Pat, and thank you for your positive statement about moving forward together. That's what I very much hope for too.
Any other questions, councillors? Thank you, Mr. Irwin, and likewise you on the next one, which is 13.8, is the Guildford Hazelmere Local Area Plan.
I'm just going to be very brief on this, Mr. Mayor. The really, again, my point, what we've done in South Guildford, where a golf course has become a housing development underneath a flight path, which we know the Airports Corporation did not want, because it makes their flight path difficult, makes Perth Airport less efficient. It's a status quo. We've got it. There's not much we can do. But again, the situation is not ideal, and that I just leave my comment at that point, because I know we can't undo it. But this is an example of what happens if you go ahead with the policy. You're stuck with it forever after.
I'll ask the question. Any questions, councillors? Thank you, Mr. Irwin. You'd like to finish up on your last one, 30.9, the Local Development Plan, Morrison Road West.
Yep, Morrison Road West. I'm worried again about planning blight. This LDP will create planning blight, particularly for the land south of Morrison Road. There is no option in the way this is going with the requisition of land for future road widening, and prohibiting or preventing access onto Morrison Road for those properties on the south side. their only option is to look to develop that land with access onto Byers Road. That's going to then create pressure on Byers Road, which is one of the, again, a heritage road. It's got 1896 terraces, workers' cottages. It's got some nice Federation houses. It's a street of houses largely with only 1 or 2 apartment buildings, which are problem places. They're in all. None of those apartments are owner-occupiers. They're all rentals, and I know from people who've lived on Byers Road that there are frequent attendances by ambulances for drug overdoses, and even corpses being taken away from those apartments. So council must be aware that there are social problems with this sort of development, and even 110 Terrace Road in Guildford, I understand it's only been bought, the units there have only been bought, the apartments have only been bought by absent landlords. In other words, no owner occupiers at all. So this is the trouble with affordable housing, and this sort of idea of 6-storey all along Morrison Road. Be careful, because the likelihood is not affordable housing, but exploitive housing or slums. And I'm just very concerned that this is a hard way of treating the land, particularly on the south side of Morrison Road. I feel it may suit some owners, but I think we've already seen those old timber frame houses demolished along there. There were 3 of them, 3 rather nice old weatherboard houses, all gone because, again, planning blight. It's probably too late, really, to raise this now. Probably should have been said 20 years ago. But, I just feel this is a heavy-handed approach to that area. For instance, the house on the Wedge, the one at the wedge between Morrison Road and Byers Road, that's a nice Federation period house. If the road widening goes ahead, that place will go for sure. And the whole character again will have gone. So that's my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin. Questions, councillors? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Irwin, one of the challenges that this council spotted studying the report at the previous meeting is that heritage building at the corner of Morrison and Byers. Now, the widening of Morrison Road is somewhat out of our control. What would you suggest we do with that building?
Well, I guess ultimately it's up to Main Roads and Main Roads budgeting, but as we know, Main Roads seem to have very deep pockets when they can find money fairly readily, so it's almost up to them. But if the council can lobby that Main Roads can be lobbied to not do further development, because we actually have a very good road network around here. We've got, with the various bypasses and with the new Lloyd Street going through over the Helena soon, we've got so many good roads already. Do we really need another 4-lane highway through an old established residential area, which will further divide those 2 parts of Woodbridge, and will divide Woodbridge off from Midland for pedestrians and even for vehicles getting in. I just feel it's if Main Roads would stay away, I'd be very happy.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank you, Mr. Irwin. That takes us now to 3.2, which is a local structure plan for lot number 100, number 50, and lot 101, number 56, Hazelmere Circus, and lot 95, number 5, Lakes Road, Hazelmere. And we have Mr. Jason Hunt from Statewide Planning speaking in support of the recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. Firstly, I'd like to say I'm speaking in support of the officer's recommendation and the conditions that are there within, but we just thought we'd provide a little bit of background and also be available if there were any questions from the councillors. The lots, as outlined by the Mayor, have a total area of 3.9 hectares, and this is predominantly currently a residential area and old legacy areas from horse training and horse paddocks. The land under the City of Swan's local planning scheme is Zone Special Use 25. The conditions of Special Use 25 are outlined extensively in the officer's report. However, one of those conditions requires the preparation of a structure plan prior to any subdivision or development of the properties within the zone. So the landowners have engaged us to prepare the structure plan, and that's what you're being asked to consider tonight. They would like to develop the land, and that means put in a development application. There is no desire to subdivide at all. We've worked very hard with the City of Swan staff and would like to acknowledge the diligence that they've had on this matter, and the report and the recommendations are, in our view, a positive step forward. In the preparation of the structure plan, there was also prepared local water management strategies, traffic impact statements, site and soil evaluations under the new government sewerage policy, bushfire management plans, and this is for the 3 lots so that they can lodge a development application. Once they lodge that development application, there will be further review by the city staff, which will then provide additional reports, additional details when the desired outcomes for those lots are put together in that development application. So there is still further opportunity for the city and the city staff to consider these sites. The overarching Hazelmere Enterprise Area Structure Plan places these particular lots in what is known as Precinct 3. There is Precinct 3A and 3B. This is in 3B. The objectives of the entire precinct, number 3, are to be a buffer between the core industrial areas and the residential areas around this. The objectives of Precinct 3B are for industrial development to facilitate light industrial zone uses in accordance with the City of Swan's local planning scheme. The report outlines that the proposed structure plan achieves these requirements, and so we support that. So in conclusion, we'd like to request that the councillors support the officer's recommendation and move this on to the West Australian Planning Commission, where it'll undergo further review and determination. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hunt. Questions, councillors? No questions. Thank you, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you.
Now move to item 3.3, which is the proposed subdivision of land northeast of Cranwood Crescent, Vivash. And the first speaker is Ms. Belinda Brackley. Ms. Brackley, you have 5 minutes.
Can I just start by asking for a little bit longer, just because I've got some pictures and also because I speak on behalf of the Stuartby Park group, Friends of Stuartby Park. Please?
Well, how long do you think you're going to need?
Not very long. Maybe another 2 minutes.
Another 2 minutes? Right,
but don't start. Can I just give out the pictures first, please?
If you give them to someone, they'll pass them out, and then I suggest you make a start, Ms. Brackley.
Yeah, just to circulate. Thank you. My name is Melinda Brackley. Ooh. I grew up in Vivash and I'm raising my 4 children in Vivash. I coordinate the community rehabilitation efforts at Stuartby Park with the Friends of Stuartby Park group. I'm a nurse at Charlie's on the brain surgery unit and I'm currently studying my Masters in Public Health, my motivation for which is the connection between the environment and well-being. My Nana's grandmother was full-blood Aboriginal but never talked about her Aboriginality as she was discouraged to do so, a sign of the times. I'm asking for the Council to propose a different recommendation than the one proposed, and that is for the whole development site to be retained as the 10% public open space in the Greater Midland Brick residential development, which is imminent and currently being negotiated by Link Property Group. The provision of public open space should not be the afterthought, but the forethought of any subdivision or any residential development. The Western Australian Planning Commission's Livable Neighbourhood Policy states, although the public open space for a larger residential estate is usually provided in stages, the Western Australian Planning Commission may require it to be provided for the entire area in the first subdivision application. Why should this constitute the public open space? There are two reasons for me. The greatest justification is the map included on page 15 of the report recommending its destruction by yourself. So I have 3 copies here. If you can't access, you can all access that map. In that map, you'll see the development is clearly depicted as the corridor between the threatened ecological community of Evelyn Reserve and the Swan River. The local area plan for Midland states clearing and fragmentation of vegetation is the biggest threat to biodiversity as it prevents the movement of fauna and dispersing of flora. Corridors are important for allowing animals to move and adapt to changes in the environment caused by fire and seasonal and climate variations. Link's environmental values report says that the vegetation is degraded, has no significant value and supports common species only that don't require a specific habitat. It is not difficult to see that even colonies of common species and non-specific vegetation will neither be common or non-specific if we don't preserve it. How do we think black cockatoos got to be threatened? Yes, they were common too once until we destroyed their habitat. Whilst not in the interest of developers to care, according to all the policies referring to the City of Swan's vegetation, council and councillors should care. They should seek to maintain corridors, strengthen biodiversity and advocate for community amenity. 46 out of the 49 residents who made submissions are asking you to do just that. Your Midland Area Plan refers to the connection between Noongar people and Midland. Actually, before I go on, the photos that are circulating are the development site. Your Midland Area Plan refers to the connection between Noongar people and Midland for 40,000 years, in fact. It refers to increasing Aboriginal involvement and increasing consultation with the Aboriginal community. Your area plan identifies Brentford Avenue, ID 4382, as an Aboriginal heritage artefact scatter site. This site exists next to Turtle Swamp Hunting Place, ID 3622. It was a listed site until Link Group sought to have it removed from the register. White Australians, I think, have a hard time acknowledging atrocities of the past. Well, what about those atrocities of the present? Under the Barnett government, the Department of Aboriginal Affairs was responsible for 3,207 sites being deregistered between 2008 and 2015, which paved the way for mining expansion up north. How? By changing the definition of what constitutes significant heritage site and moving the determination of such places from the Western Australian Museum to the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs. And so it continues today, right here with Link and the City of Swan in those recommendations. No better, no more educated, no more mindful of Aboriginal connection to land and perpetuating disempowerment. Link site assessment says artefacts found in 1977 indicate the camp is at least 7,000 years old. I looked closer at this site when the Pindan subdivision was encroaching. You may remember me speaking of it, and unearthed readings indicating that in 1981, 100 stone artefacts, handheld implements, including scrapers and tools, were discovered and believed to be as old as 32,000 years. Your own assessment indicated glass artefacts show the camp was used after 1829, that's Link's assessment, and Aboriginal camps around the brickworks were occupied until the 1970s. Deregistered or not, it's my understanding that the appropriate custodians have not been consulted before the sites about the sites and their imminent bulldozing. 4.3 hectares of trees and bush, albeit degraded, and Aboriginal history, albeit disrupted, has the potential to be minded and rehabilitated as a haven for wildlife and as an acknowledgement of Aboriginal history in Vivash. I think there's something new on the report is that it's $60,000 or something for a hearing at SAT. Well, this is an area that's worth more than $60,000 to the residents of Vivash. That's it. Did I come in under the time?
Yep, you did. Well done. Questions, Councillor Scanlon?
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation and your personal contribution to that story. I wanted to ask you when looking at the plans, you know, I see what I think may be some positive things, but I'd like to hear from you. What's positive about this development for Viveash?
Oh, well, it's good that Link consulted with the community. That did not happen with the Demol business on Lot 62, and it didn't happen with the Cranwood with the Pindan subdivision. So they're a bit the winners from the beginning because at least they've bothered. And they also supplied a decent, well, I suppose their environmental values report shows that they care about having it assessed, which is a plus, which didn't happen with either of the previous subdivisions either. I think from my point of view about the city's recommendations, at least they acknowledged that there was hope with the additional blocks being asked for retention. But black cockatoos, which I was trying to photograph them in there this morning and missed the opportunity on my bike with the camera around my neck, but they're there every day. And it's not just the nesting hollows that are important, it's the roosting and the foraging that is important. And, you know, it needs to be nurtured in its wholeness, not in sections, because we just heard about how fragmented open space is not useful, really, in comparison to keeping a whole corridor. I think that map, like, you know, I thought maybe we can just ask for a little something else, but the map tells it all. The map tells that whole corridor needs to be maintained. Also must say the condition to put the road through in the first stage, nobody's going to argue about a road going through, because the debacle that is La Salle traffic, where you frequently nearly take kids out in your travels, is unbelievable. So that condition is a good condition as well. Also, the letterbox drop. I don't know. It says that the letterbox drop for the submissions, regarding the submissions, went northwest of Cranwood, which I don't know if anybody can tell me. Did that include Burnley, all the muses off Burnley, Avon and Ashby? Because I think in the past it's only kind of been 200 metres from the development site, but your report would allude to the fact that all of Viveash was included in that delivery drop, which would be great if that was the case, because all of the people of Viveash are impacted by the development that's proposed. Also, a couple of those pictures that I did circulate, they are towards the top of the earth bund, so the actual development includes significant vegetation on the other side of that earth bund. I think.
You got a further question, Councillor?
Just quickly, thank you. I'd just like to ask you, what can we do from here to try and make this work for the Viveash community?
Well, I don't know anything about planning, really. Only what I've kind of learnt from that. It's frustrating business for both the community and the planners, I'm sure. But well, I think what I'm asking is that there is the potential. Link is negotiating the purchase of the whole of Midland Brick. There is not one tree on that whole of Midland Brick, and you can. It is all buildings, and who gives a toss what happens to those buildings? Build on it, but for Christ's sakes, like if anything's screaming out at you, it's save the friggin' corridor. Who cares about the rest? Build whatever you want on there. Well, within the housing, well, I don't want any ghetto type slummy stuff, but you know, according to the zoning, sure, but. That is one aspect of a huge development that can be retained for the amenity of the new residents and the old residents, and that's what needs to be asked. And I'm sure if Link would sit down and view it in its entirety, for all of the mouth service, lip service that they give to the environmental values report, and caring about the community and being there for the long haul and caring about the relationship with community members, then in actual fact, they too would see that the retention of that corridor is to everybody's benefit.
Okay. Councillor Johnson, you got a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Mel, thanks for your presentation. It's quite a bold idea. So I think what you're proposing is that we, instead of approving this subdivision, we should have an alternate motion to recommend to the WAPC that the entire section on this page of the report and that entire greenfield site with those trees on would be retained as a future park, and that really Link should look at coming up with a structure plan for the entire Midland Brick facility. Is that what you're suggesting we do?
Yeah, I think that it has to come in a bit for it to only be the 10%. It would depend on how Link would feel about being kind to the community and maybe giving them a little bit more, whatever. But I think it would have to be shaved off the edge to be the 10% in that greater area. But ultimately, that would be the idea. It is the link between Evelyn Reserve and the river. We've lost enough corridors. We don't need to lose any more. All of the area plans for the City of Swan go over and over and over about biodiversity and corridors and whatever, and here you are trying to negotiate little extra blocks here, there and everywhere. Well, who gives a toss about that? We keep the corridor because that's what the City of Swan proposes that should be done in the first place, with all of their planning, with all of their whatever, everything, their biodiversity policy, everything.
Okay, so there's obviously a risk if we go ahead with the alternate motion that I've just outlined, that if it were to get through this council, it might get knocked back and we'd just get the subdivision exactly as proposed by Link. There's obviously a risk.
What can I say?
Okay. Councillor Henderson, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation. The wildlife corridors are fundamentally really, really important, I agree. But we already have the Blackadder Creek, if you like, which is really a very nice corridor in terms of wildlife. Given that the likelihood of the proposed change that you're proposing isn't going to happen, do you think we could do more in the Blackadder Creek corridor to improve east-west corridors?
Well, the Blackadder Woodbridge Catchment Group already works in the Blackadder Creek. No, I don't think so. I think it's very visible that that's an important corridor for wildlife. You just have to actually go and stand there to see that. You can see the settlement ponds. There's heaps of activity of wildlife in there, and it's very important to keep it. And I don't think you can negotiate the loss of one bit because we can save another bit. I don't think that's something you can negotiate, not with the amount of the considerable loss of vegetation that the City of Swan has had with development. You know, it doesn't need rehabilitating. It does in terms of planting undergrowth and improving the vegetation that is there. But it has massive trees. It has a lot of trees, as per the photos, and it can be nurtured.
Councillor Prodovnik.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. There's a representative here tonight from Link. It would be really helpful to hear his thoughts, if possible, on the proposal to keep the corridor, if that's a possibility. Would you be able to comment on that or give us your thoughts?
Well, he is speaking later on, so that's a question you put.
Great.
So we're not debating, so the question can come later. Councillor Johnson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, just next question is, in this area of figure 5, or with respect to one of the other plans in the report, can you tell us where the Aboriginal sites are?
Yeah, so, I think I circulated that map, and you can see that it's very close. Both of those sites are very close to the settlement ponds at the back of the...
Has anyone got the map?
It's been tucked away, never to be seen again. Now, I've got two here. I've got a few here that I've printed off. So that's the artefact site, and that's the already deregistered hunting ground. They're the two settlement ponds there. It's easy to correlate that to the property groups.
Can I say that?
Yep.
That answers my question, Mr Mayor. Quite happy to pass these around if...
Councillor Catalano, you're next.
Yeah, the corridor of the Blackadder Creek is very different to the corridor between the threatened ecological community and the river, isn't it? I mean, it's a different it's different types of trees.
It's different vegetation,
types of
yes.
Different
I don't know a
soil
lot about vegetation. I'm learning about vegetation, but I do read a bit.
It's not wetland in respect of flowing creek.
No.
So, in fact, it's a very different corridor with different environmental assets and all the flora and fauna that goes with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we already lost a significant amount of that vegetation with the previous two subdivisions, the Cranwood Crescent subdivision and the Demol. They took a lot of massive trees, 150-year-old plus trees. There's a splattering of those which Link has proposed to keep as their Dinky Park. But, they continue on all the way through.
And those trees aren't found in the Blackadder Creek, are they?
No.
No.
Further questions, councillors? Councillor Parry?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can staff please refer to page 219 in the agenda? It states that while city staff acknowledge that the identified trees...
Mr Parry, Councillor Parry?
Yes.
If you're asking questions to staff, has anyone else got a question of Ms Brackley?
My apologies.
Okay. Thank you, Ms Brackley.
Thank you.
Questions to staff, Councillor Parry?
Sorry about that. Thank you very much. So the third last paragraph in the agenda, has the WAPC accepted this before in regards to basically acknowledging that it's not hollow trees yet for the black cockatoos, but they accept it as the POS?
Mr Russell?
Through Mr Mayor, well, I don't know where the WAPC has got consideration of this subdivision application, because they'll work away on it and they'll await our comments. So the report before the council, whatever the council decides to endorse next week, goes off to the department, and they'll have the virtue, the possibility of reading all of this, weighing up what we've considered and whether or not they agree. But I don't know whether they've formed a view yet on any of the material that Link has provided through the subdivision application. I don't know where they're at with their assessment.
Councillor Coley.
Thank you, Mayor. Question to staff. I'm just interested to know why this piece of land is being separated out from an overall treatment of the complete area. If this area is considered surplus land in the report, why is it not considered? Why are we separating it out? Does it have a different title? I mean, I'd like to hear from staff on that one if I could.
Mr Russell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, as councillors would be aware, this is a legacy issue. It's older than I am. 1968, this was approved, so I've given away my age right there and then. 1968, as per the same with the previous subdivision that the city dealt with. 1968, the then Town Planning Board, as it might have been called at the time, would have approved a subdivision and created registered land titles that exist to this day, and are a legal title owned previously by Midland Brick and now in the ownership of Link, I believe. Those titles exist. Now, I'll accept the fact, of course, as we must, that in 1968 there wasn't an Environmental Protection Act, there wasn't an Aboriginal Heritage Act, there was a raft of legislation that didn't exist. But it doesn't change the fact in legal sense that this is already there, and in point of fact, they would be well entitled to simply, there'd be nothing to prevent them from demolishing and enacting that subdivision and clearing it out as it sits now. And I believe that point was clarified by the late Mr Eric Lumsden at the time when he was chairman of the commission, when there was the same controversy over the previous stage of subdivision that was doing exactly the same thing. And that's a fact there. So we've got to acknowledge all that. We're not dealing with it as a clean slate. We're starting with the fact that whether we like it or not, there is legal title over a multitude of lots, and the pattern that was demonstrated here in the report, that Link, as the owners of the land, are well legally entitled to go in and clear it. So what we're dealing with is here whether or not, in that context, what we can achieve here is a positive, better outcome than what's already there.
Further question, Councillor Goley?
Just to follow on then, given that, Mr Russell, is it possible that this land was set up as a buffer and therefore zoned differently since 1968? Has it got a different classification that maybe not touched on within the report?
Mr Russell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, we can say this for certainty. There is no legal buffer in our planning scheme that delineates this land that sits with title over it but is in an uncleared state as vegetation. There is no legal mechanism in our scheme or the Metropolitan Region scheme that creates a sort of buffer. I believe, and the proponent might be in a position to elaborate on this, that it may well be that Midland Brick chose to keep this area as bushland and not clear it and actually develop in accordance with the titles to the land granted to it, to keep it as a buffer, a vegetated buffer between the existing part of Vivash and the Midland Brick operations. In fact, I believe, yes, it probably served that purpose deliberately for a number of years.
Thank you, Mr Russell. No further questions of staff? Okay, that brings us to the next speaker, Mr Alan Hope, speaking on the same item against the recommendation. Mr Hope.
Evening all, Mr Mayor and the councillors. I recently moved into Vivash about 18 months ago into the Pindan estate, and I live at 36 Harfords Avenue on the corner of Cranwood Avenue. Cranwood Crescent, I'm sorry. One of the reasons we moved in there was because of the nature around us and the corridor we're talking about tonight. I planned on talking about a lot of things that had already been talked about by my delightful friend over here. So I'm really not going to go over that again. That's not what I'm here for. But just to let you know what it's like to live there, the peace, the quiet, despite the aircraft, the nature of being, I think, a jewel of Midland. Vivash is a jewel. It's something very, very special, and all the residents who live there know that. Although I'm part of that new estate, the Crescent estate, and my house was where the bush was. We're trying to keep into that spirit. We've planted over 200 natives on our verge for a start. Not ideal because they're not plans that are local to the area, but we're trying to make a difference, if you know what I mean. I feel we seem to be developing just for the sake of development. I know it's 1968 we had this, what we've just been told, that this estate was sort of laid out as what's going to happen in the future. But times really, really have changed since then. What was right then is definitely not right now. We've just seen some terrible things over the east, and by some miracle West Australia escaped it. We're seeing global change. We're seeing global climate changes. And part of that problem is attitude of just, let's tear it up. Let's bulldoze it and build some more houses. This has to change. And the council has a real opportunity here to produce something very, very special. I'm not talking about just keeping it. I'm thinking of improving the vegetation there. Maybe in putting a bike track, and certainly the Eveline Road would be absolutely perfect to go through that area as well. It won't completely destroy it like the houses will. But I think we have this opportunity to produce something really extraordinary. It will connect with the Blackadder thing. It's like a big curve going right through, except for that little hiccup at the end of Muriel, where that new development's going in there. It's almost continuous bush, big semicircle right around. And it's beautiful. Living there is a delight. And I just feel that we're just going to destroy something very, very special. It's time we need to change our attitudes. Global warming is not, and global change, whatever you want to call it, whether you believe it or not, we're seeing it. It's happening. I don't believe keeping this corridor is going to save us, save the planet. But saving the planet is little tiny bits being done all over the world, not just on some grand scale that some federal government's going to bring into it. It's at the local level. It's where we are now. And we have to do something about it. Right, plans from 1968 were put in there, and with the subdivisions there so they can go in and do what they like. But Link and the council have an opportunity here to do something special.
Yeah, 1 minute.
To make a statement. To make a statement. And that would be to keep it. Sure, develop the rest of Midland Brick. That's fine with us. But incorporate it. Maybe get rid of the burns. Level it. make it more accessible to people. At the moment, it's a great wall of China on both sides and with a cyclone wire fence. We just need to make this change, make this mindset change to do something about what's happening to the whole planet, not just Viveash or Midland. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Hope. Any questions, councillors? Thank you, Mr Hope.
Thank you.
We now move on to Mr Judd Dyer from Link Properties, speaking in support of the recommendation. Thank you, Mr Dyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Obviously, I'm speaking in support of item 3.3 and very much support the council officer's report. That what we're proposing with this subdivision application is an improvement to what's already on the ground there. Sitting back and listening to some of the comments there, I think there are a lot of things that we are doing that that the community is asking for, and it's consistent with what we've communicated to the council since December last year. It's consistent with the discussions that we've had with the community, which was in late January this year. And that is, we're opening up the foreshore. I couldn't tell you how many metres of foreshore that's been in private ownership for over 74 years this year. We are open, which is completely fenced, inaccessible. We, as part of our plans to develop the site and continue to maintain the operational brickworks on the northern portion of the site, we'll be opening up that section of foreshore that has been open for 74 years. So that's providing additional amenity to the current and the future community that will be in this place. Mr Russell is correct. The land that we're talking about today exists as individual certificates of title that have been created, road reserves that have been created but unconstructed. The land is zoned for residential use. So rather than running with what's there at the moment, which was a legacy of something back in the 60s, we've taken the time to go and survey every single tree that has over 300 millimetres diameter, and deliberately curved roads, amended lot boundaries around those trees, so we can save over 80% of those 85 trees that are within that subdivision application. We're adding in a pocket park as well, which is something that we've heard from the community and from our research is important. And that's obviously getting rid of existing lots that are already approved so we can put in a pocket park there. I think the connection of the road, when we had 84 residents back in January, there was a large proportion of that community which was in support of that road connection. It's obviously crucial from providing a second access point from a bushfire point of view. It's crucial for reducing the peak hour that occurs at LaSalle College, which we've heard is an absolute nightmare. Some members of the community didn't want it because they were comfortable with the existing one road in, one road out. So it can be a balance between achieving everybody's objectives. And one of the other bits which I think everybody's glossing over is that site as it exists today, the majority of that site is concrete hardstand, a heat sink. We're looking at revegetating at this stage 53 hectares of that site, putting more trees than have ever been there before. We're saving over 85% of the trees within that first stage. To quarantine, and probably speak to it a bit now, to quarantine, what we're proposing to re-subdivide, if I can say that, as the 10% open space for that entire precinct would be the detriment of the future community. I think good planning, and I'm not going to speak verse about it, but you need to be able to disperse these places. To provide that as 10% open space would then remove the opportunity to retain the TEC that currently sits south of the clay shed. It will remove the opportunity to embellish the foreshore reserve, remove the opportunity for further pocket parks within the future estate. So I don't think this, we'll park that in one pile and that can be everything for the whole piece. So I think we need to take a balanced approach. So it's not something I would support, particularly also given those lots exist now. It's zoned for residential uses. We're getting rid of lots to create a park, and we're retaining over 80% of those 85 trees. If I can just add a bit more colour to some of the items raised in the officer's report, and from some of the feedback we've got from the community, there was a note about a lack of active open space, somewhere to kick a football. Our pocket park, again, provides the opportunity to do that, and is included with the landscaping plans that we've provided as part of our subdivision. There was concern about increases in density. but the average lot size we have within the first stage is approximately 440 square metres, which is in line with the average density under the R20 code, which is, when you're looking at new greenfield estates, and I'd actually argue this is a brownfield estate, it's 2 kilometres from the Midland CBD, it's exactly where we should be putting more people. But if you take that as a greenfield example, you're probably looking around mid-300 square metres is the average lot size for those new estates that you'll see through Brabham. There was comments around water pressure, which is an existing issue within the suburb of Viveash. That's something that Water Corp needs to come to the party with, but because we'll be day-to-day with Water Corp, Western Power...
Have you got much more? Because I'm mindful that I did grant Miss Brackley a little bit of extra time. So
sure, I'll hurry up.
Comments. I'm quite happy to grant you another 2 minutes as well.
No, I'll be quick. We can obviously help to address that issue through what we're doing. And if I can just touch on the Indigenous heritage point. So we briefed the CEO of the Southwest Aboriginal Land and Sea Council as soon as we agreed to purchase this site. Obviously, the Swan River is extremely important to the Whadjuk people. So we have already met with Ms Catherine Fennell, with our Indigenous consultant. The site that has been deregistered, that is correct. It was extremely disturbed over the years. I mean, Midland Brick, Boral, Midland Brick, doesn't matter who it is, the operators of the brickworks over the last 74 years have extracted clay from the site. They've set up drainage ponds. It's completely disturbed and as such been deregistered. We are lining up a site visit with the Whadjuk Working Party at the end of this month to literally go for a walk along the river and get their views. We've been trying to present to the Whadjuk Working Party since early this year, and we understand we're now on the agenda for the May meeting. So we take that. The Indigenous heritage piece very important, and we've now actually got someone on board from a historical interpretation point of view, and that's both from the European heritage around Midland Brick, but obviously the Indigenous heritage around the whole river. We have them on board now to assist us with that as well. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Question. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Dye, first of all, I just want to, you've said in your deputation that you are going to retain, I think, 85% of the trees over 300 millimetre in diameter. And looking at this plan on page 230, are those the trees that I can see marked on the diagram there?
That's it. Yeah.
That's right, okay. So some of those trees are on the, I think would be the eastern side of the proposed road, which seem to me to be potentially outside the subdivision. Are they going to be retained in perpetuity?
Yes, that's
They definitely are. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. That's all for me right now, Mr. Mayor.
Ken Scully.
Thank you, Mayor. Judd, the term pocket park, is that a technical term or is it
colloquial?
Sorry?
It's a colloquial, it's day-to-day. Pocket park meaning it's not a large kickabout, football oval.
So it would suggest a tiny park.
I don't know what's a big and a small park. But
a pocket's something you'd put in your pocket or something, but not necessarily a big park. Okay.
It's not an AFL size park.
One at a time, thank you, Councillor.
Just looking at the map here of the area, when the first idea of developing this whole site came up, I thought, great, it looks fantastic on the map, and if you took away the river foreshore and the reserve, Reg Bond Reserve, and the Jack Williamson Oval, and took away all that other green space, it wouldn't have much going for it, really. Would you agree? The whole area. I mean, the benefit of the area is the green space, isn't it? The river foreshore.
Oh, it's a fantastic site.
The Reg Bond Reserve, Jackman Oval, the closeness to Midland, that's not going to change. But looking at the site, the benefit of the site is the green space, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a fantastic site. There's very little opportunities to get sites sitting on the edge of the river. Absolutely.
It's probably more a comment, but I would have thought that the retention of this green corridor would have been something that would add value to the sites and make it a lot easier to sell in the long term. Is that a consideration going forward, or is there?
It's not something we're considering at the moment. No. What we're trying to do is retain as many trees as we can within that first stage.
You said that it would, if that was retained, it would remove the opportunity to embellish the foreshore. I'm just wondering what Why would that be? Why would you remove if we kept that bit of green space, why would that remove the opportunity to embellish the foreshore?
What we're trying to do over the entire site is balance where we have green spaces. So not all the green space is in one area that benefits, that is more accessible to some residents than others.
You also said it would be detrimental to the future of the community if we kept that. I mean, we've just heard from 2 community members saying this would be a great, addition to the community if we kept this green corridor. Why would it be detrimental to the future of the community?
Councillor, I'll give you a heads up. You're starting to get into debate. So, well, you're actually getting into debate by question. You've done
Last question, Mayor. I'd like to hear the answer if that's all right.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Dyer answer, but I'll remind you. Thank you, Mr. Dyer, if you want to answer that one.
I'm not sure if I said detrimental to the community.
You said detrimental to the future of the community.
Okay, sure. What I would have said, I imagine, would have been detrimental to the future community that is sitting there, that are going to be there, and the existing community. Because what we want to try and do is maintain the TC south of the clay shed, embellish the river, open that up for public access, provide other recreational opportunities throughout that whole, what we're hoping to be a future estate.
Thanks, Councillor Scanlon. I think you had your hand up at some stage.
I certainly did. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. So I have a couple of questions for you. And one is, if you remove the wildlife corridor and have the pockets, how will the wildlife traverse the space?
I think when you're talking about wildlife, obviously you're talking about ground mammals and avian mammals. So in terms of avian wildlife, that's not flying. Sorry. Yep. Again, that's only going to be improved as we revegetate the whole estate.
On the ground.
There actually isn't that much at all.
That pass through that and use that space?
Not at all. It's an active drainage pond for the site. So they pump the site drains to a sump. It gets pumped up to 3 settling ponds, and then it actively drains. It acts as a drainage function for the site.
Okay, and so the studies have shown that there's no ground-dwelling fauna?
Very little.
And none living... What about living in the trees that travel? So can you quantify very little a little further? Like, is there a number?
I couldn't give you numbers off the top of my head, no.
So, but Link has done fauna studies?
Yeah, so all of that is in as supporting appendices to our application.
Okay. And my other question for you is, it's about the Aboriginal heritage site. We've got a woman here who has told us that she has Aboriginal heritage. Her great-great-grandmother or great-great-great-grandmother was Aboriginal. She tells us that the right people have not been consulted. She tells us the site is significant and should be retained. Will Link consider retaining that site?
So the advice from our consultant, which has been, I guess, confirmed by the Wodjuk Group, is that site is being completely disturbed and no longer has any relevance. In terms of the Swan River, we still need to engage and go through that process with the Wodjuk Working Party.
So the Wodjuk Working Party, who you mentioned a few names before, are they from this area?
We haven't met with the Working Party yet. That's the meeting we've been trying to get since the beginning of this year. We understand the next opportunity we have is in May, but notwithstanding, we're organising a site visit with representatives of the Working Party, who I don't know the names of yet.
Okay. And this is their land, like Vivash is their land?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
No
And I hope that Link can really consider that seriously.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Dyer, look, Link have done a very good job of consulting with council and with the community. I think we've met on at least 3 occasions in briefings, place meetings, and at the event you organised, LaSalle College. On one of those occasions, you said to me something like you wanted this to be comparable with Bushmead, which, as you know, has a very large amount of public open space. I think there's only 10% development and the other 90% is public open space in the way of bush. When I look at this site, have you given any consideration to what I call Plan B, which is the residents' preference that you consider a structure plan for the whole site and retain this section, which is currently a wildlife corridor and has all the trees, in the same way that Bushmead has retained their trees? I mean, Is that Plan B a realistic option?
I've got inherent knowledge of Bushmead because I was there for 5 years working on that project. The site there was purchased with, it had a conservation covenant on it, and the developable area was something like 56 hectares. The end result was they developed 90 hectares, with the balance being transferred as bush forever. But obviously there was re-vegetation and offsets associated with that because there was clearing of black cockatoo habitat. So we did go through an EPBC process there. So I'm well aware of that, and certainly in terms of an aesthetic, that's exactly what we're aiming for, retention and meandering as much as we can. In terms of retaining the best stuff, there is a registered TEC on the site, as I said, south of the clay shed. We picked that up very quickly through our due diligence before acquiring a site. And the first thing we did was draw a big green box around it to make sure that we, that it was taken into account with our future planning, and that remains. So we have gone and done our due diligence across the site. We've identified the highest quality vegetation that is worthy of retention, and there's an argument that all vegetation is worthy of retention, and I can sympathise with that to some extent, but also there is, the site is zoned for residential development. If we implemented what was already approved, it will be a worse outcome. So we're trying to do the best we can within the parameters that we're given.
On that, but is it something you could consider a structured plan for the whole site, and then although the development would take longer and you would not realise the value of your asset in so quickly, you would get a better outcome if you retained that.
Our planning at the moment, which assumes that this subdivision proposal goes ahead, our broader planning, structure planning for the whole site, even with this proposal going through, will be above the 10% requirement.
Final question then is, the threatened ecological community, the TEC, is that connected to this sort of ribbon of bushland?
I'm sorry, I can't say.
I'm just looking at this corridor here.
No, so it's sort of the L shape to the right hand side of the page.
Okay, thank you.
Next to that, there's a big shed roof there.
Yeah, got that, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Catalano, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Is there any chance that we could have a look at that fauna and environmental study that you've done to ascertain for ourselves whether, what you say in terms of there's no life in there? I find it hard to believe, but I'd like to have a look at that study. Is there any chance you could
certain it
send
would have
it
been
to
an
me?
appendice to the application.
Pardon?
It should have been an attachment to the subdivision application.
Is there any way that you can
99%.
send it to me?
Sure.
Yeah.
Mr.
Okay.
Russell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can certainly provide the attachments to the subdivision application to any of the interested councillors before next week.
Thank you. That will be for the environmental study. And did you do a fauna study as well, or was that part
Yes.
of it?
Yeah.
Flora
And fauna.
A separate flora and fauna study?
From memory, I think it was in the same report, but it covered
In
both.
the same report?
Yep.
It's an environmental study, is it?
Yep.
Okay. And you haven't done any ethnographic studies, or you haven't, done a survey, an ethnographic survey of this particular corridor or that area?
Ethnographic in terms of Indigenous heritage?
Yes.
We have engaged Horizon, and they have, and again, I think it's attached to the subdivision
Oh,
application.
there's a study as well.
There should be.
You have got a survey.
Yeah, and if it's not attached, we can provide that.
Oh, okay. Could I have that one as well, please, Mr. Russell? Thank you. And you haven't consulted yet with traditional owners?
As I said, we've
You're going to be doing that still. Okay. And I just, just wanted to ask you whether, is it a really... I understand that you've got this corridor, which is effectively a wildlife corridor, that it's already had subdivision approval, or there's lots there ready to go. But don't you think that, we might have hit that point now in the history of human, development or existence, or whatever you want to call it, the Anthropocene, that actually all these short-term capitalising...
Yes, Councillor Congleton.
I'm sorry, but
Just pull your microphone and turn it off.
Mr. Bob will give me a hard time. We are entertaining into debate, statements, comments, and I thought the intent was questions, and then questions to be answered. I'm sorry, but it seems to be going off track, and I'd like to bring it back, if I could, to questions and answers, not comments, paraphrasing, and we've now spent an enormous amount of time on this issue. Sorry.
And I am inclined to agree there.
Well, this is my last question, actually. So I just wanted to say
can
that...
you make it a question?
Yeah, the short-term gain... I can, if you let me finish. The short-term gain of developing this land, is in the long term, the damage to the environment is far outweighs any short-term gain that Link and, in fact, future generations of people in not only Vivash but the rest of Western Australia have. I mean, don't you think that's like some serious consideration needs to be made about that in terms of the corridor?
We'll be here for 10 or 15 years, so we're not here for the short term. I think it'll be a long-term asset for the City of Swan. I think these are the areas that are close proximity to public amenity and that's the Midland Town Centre. That reduces the advantages of infill are documented everywhere you look. It's 100% better, making better use of existing infrastructure than continuing to sprawl north of Ellenbrook. I think it'll be an asset for the community moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. I'm going to take one more question from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lucas, and then we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. My question is, you asked a question earlier on about the Pocket Park. Do I take that to be the public open space at the corner of York and Somerset?
Yes. Yep.
So according to the map, it's almost 3,500 metres square, so that gives the answer to the question asked earlier. But my main concern is on the corner of Winston, Crescent and Somerset. In the very top corner, it's got temporary drainage. Can you advise me what that temporary drainage site is? And what's the long-term future? Is it still going to be a drainage area in the future, or is it just temporary?
So there are existing lots at the moment. As you develop a site, you need to set up temporary drainage sumps until the ultimate drainage connection is connected. So that's what that will be used for.
So that area depicted as temporary drainage, they'll be subdivided into lots in the future?
It's existing lots now, yes.
Thank you.
It will be removed.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer.
Thank you.
Councillors, now we move on to item 3.4, the State of Administrative...
Questions for staff, Mr Mayor.
Well, I think we spent enough time on that one.
Well,
how many questions?
Questions for staff now.
How many questions have you got, Councillor Johnson, please?
Depends on the answer, Mr Mayor.
Just ask a question.
Okay, I've got a question for staff. So, thank you, Mr Mayor. My question for staff is it a realistic thing for us to put forward a recommendation to the referring authority, the WAPC, that instead of proceeding with the subdivision, we should request a structure plan for the entire site and that would retain this wildlife corridor?
Mr. Russell?
Well, as I've said many times before, Mr Mayor, this council can make any resolution it sees fit. No one's holding any duress to any of the councillors to say, make this resolution or that. You can do as you see fit. It is not an unreasonable situation to say, well, look, in terms of an overall package of what is the redevelopment of the Midland Brick site, you might do a structure plan. But I think you've heard from Mr Dyer, they are going to do one. They're in the process of actually submitting concept plans. We have a meeting not too far away with all of the stakeholders, including city representatives, that will look at and they will table an overall structure plan. They've got proposals for the oval and other bits and pieces. So you could advance a recommendation along those lines, but I would say that the Commission and the senior departmental staff have already taken a roadmap as to how this will work out and look at this proposal on its own and then a structure plan for the broader area of the Midland Brick site. But that doesn't prejudice the council making such a resolution, but I would, in all honesty, say I think the department and the Commission have decided their approach to what will be subject of a structure plan and dealing with this individually as a subdivision application, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Russell. Councillor Catalano? That's okay. Now we are moving on, councillors. So we're going to item 3.4, the State Administrative Tribunal reconsideration of the refusal of the proposed place of worship and change of use of existing house and to caretaker's dwelling at lot number 23, number 1 Lake Farm Retreat, Balladura. And the first speaker is Miss Daniela Marija, I guess that's how you say it, speaking support of the recommendation and against the development application.
Yeah.
And
Good
you have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Daniela Merja from Urbanista Town Planning, and I'm speaking in favour of the Office's recommendation in relation to item 3.4. So Urbanista Town Planning has been engaged by several landowners along Lake Farm Retreat to assist in the preparation of submissions against the proposed development. By way of background, the application was refused by the Council in May last year for reasons relating to the proposed land use being a risk to the groundwater and for amenity reasons in relation to increased traffic and impacts on the rural lifestyle of the area. An application was lodged to the State Administrative Tribunal for review, and as part of this process, we were invited to present the issues of the Lake Farm Retreat residents to the member of the tribunal. In addition, we engaged a traffic consultant to assess the traffic impacts of the proposed development on Lake Farm Retreat to ensure that the Council's reason for refusal could be substantiated at the time. The traffic consultant concluded that the proposed development would have a significant impact on the approach of Lake Farm Retreat, and the delays on the intersection with Hepburn Avenue would be unacceptable, causing lane blockage and queues along Lake Farm Retreat. As a result of mediation, the applicants have submitted amended plans which show the proposal being amended from one building of 1,200 square metres to 3 buildings with a total of 725 square metres. The car parking area has also reduced from 98 car bays to 50, and the total patrons have reduced to 50 people. The applicant has also provided a submission which states that their proposal is no longer a place of worship, but now a community purpose. Whilst we accept that the proposal has reduced in size, the owners of Lake Farm Retreat still maintain their objection to the proposal. Additionally, the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation still maintain that they do not support the proposal due to the risk of contamination to our drinking water. In our submission to the City, dated 28th of January 2020, we provided the City with a recent tribunal decision which clearly outlines the key differences between place of worships, community purpose land uses, club premises and educational establishments. When applying the tribunal's decision to this application, it is quite clear that this proposal is a place of worship. Whilst the officers' report do not elaborate on this matter any further, we acknowledge that the officers in their report to Council maintain that this land use is a public worship and not a community purpose. In our previous deputation to the Council in May last year, we asked the Council to consider the potential amenity impacts of the proposed development and apply this as a reason for refusal, in addition to the reason relating to the groundwater contamination risk. In accordance with the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes regulations, all development applications are required to be assessed against Clause 67 of the deemed provisions. In relation to amenity, the regulations consider the compatibility of the development within its setting and the amenity of the locality. When considering the compatibility of this development within its setting on Lake Farm Retreat, it is crucial to review and consider the other land uses and development within the locality. In this instance, I would define the locality to be all the properties within the Lake Farm Retreat subdivision. The Lake Farm Retreat locality is a small subdivision located in Balladura to the north of Hepburn Avenue. Lake Farm Retreat is a cul-de-sac road that is occupied by 13 lots that are all approximately 4 hectares in size. The lots are zoned general rural, however the precinct is surrounded by medium density residential to the south on the other side of Hepburn Avenue and state government owned regional reserve land to the north and east. These lots are mostly made up of single dwellings with large areas of open space. The large majority of these lots are not used for any productive rural activities or commercial purposes and essentially are just a single house on a large lot. In this instance, the existing amenity and setting of Lake Farm Retreat is a quiet cul-de-sac residential subdivision that is not conducive to high volumes of traffic, excess noise or numerous visitors to the area at any one time, as well as the development of large buildings and car parks and the clearing of native trees and vegetation to construct these buildings. In view of the above, we consider that whilst the proposal has been recommended for refusal, the Council should also apply additional reasons for refusal in relation to amenity impacts of the proposed development on the locality of Lake Farm Retreat. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Kiley.
Danielle, thank you. Thank you for coming again. I just note that they've reduced the actual number of patrons from 200 to 50.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think how many people would they have to reduce it to be suitable to? 50 is not a lot of people. It's like 10 cars, 5 people in a car potentially. How many people would we get it down? Could we get it down to before the community would be happy with this?
Yeah, sure. Well, put community aside, the application was referred back to the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation. They've reviewed it and they have still maintained their position that the land use is not a compatible use within the groundwater protection area. So clearly the significant reduction of patrons has no bearing on the fact that this land use is just not supportable from their point of view. So in terms of the community, whilst place of worships have been approved and do exist in a general rural zone, in my opinion, Lake Farm Retreat should not be zoned general rural, or it shouldn't have that same sort of definition or objectives of the general rural zone that applies in, say, Gidgegannup or Bullsbrook, because it is a different area and it is completely different to those sorts of, those large lots that have rural activities, the agriculture. This doesn't occur in Lake Farm Retreat. It's its own should be its own little zone. So
okay, so, thank you. Just a follow-on question. You said this time in this presentation that the houses in the area were just sort of houses and there was no activity going on, whereas last time we had established in May last year that there was a nursery operating in one of them. That was, I believe, and there was also the keeping of goats and other animals on another site. But now have these businesses ceased?
I said the majority. Yeah.
Oh, the majority. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions, councillors? Councillor Parry.
I just have one very quick question. How would you define the intersection of Lake Farm Retreat and to Hepburn Ave? Can you describe what that would be if there was additional cars on that intersection, please?
Okay, so it's a T section at the moment, and obviously Lake Farm Retreat is a cul-de-sac, so there isn't that ability for cars to sort of drive through the subdivision. But basically, what the issue was that the traffic consultant was sort of explaining was that if everyone's sort of coming and going to the place of worship at the same time, then there's that blocking of Lake Farm Retreat and that banking up of traffic turning on mainly right if you were going right onto Hepburn Avenue. So that's what the issue would be. And, if the residents of Lake Farm Retreat wanting to leave at that time, then, there is that potential, just bank up. And I think they were looking at 10 minutes wait potentially for that time. And obviously this is all just based on theory and numbers and, you never know. But also the traffic theory does say that when there is increased wait times, it leads to frustration and potential, people sort of trying to sneak into traffic and do things that are generally unsafe. And again, this is just like general comments. You obviously can't really know what's going to happen until it's in place, but that's the theory behind the traffic engineering. Yeah.
Further question, Councillor Parry.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Also, just another thing, do you believe there's been more flow on because of the Northlink changes as well in regards to Hepburn Ave as well from Lake Farm Retreat as well?
I'm not sure, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Catalano, you got a question?
Yes, thanks. So when you've made this new application, or you've revised, your application.
No,
was
she's
that
not the applicant. She's speaking against it. She's not the applicant.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Coley.
Just one more, if I could. Are you familiar with the intersection of Bellafin Drive and Hepburn Avenue, where a vast majority of traffic enters Belladura? It's not far from the intersection we're talking about. You said would cause a lot of difficulty.
No.
I'd just make the point then, if I could, that most people coming from that area, there's thousands of people entering that section, and there's the same pull-off lanes as you would, in fact, probably the same amount of area to pull off going from Hepburn Avenue into Belladura from the north there, as there is for just 5 or 6 houses into Lake Farm Retreat. So I just don't see how there's issue of traffic coming in and out of Lake Farm Retreat is going to be a problem.
I think you're getting a debate.
Again, the owners of Lake Farm Retreat engaged a traffic consultant to do this analysis and do these studies. They do base it on main roads sort of theories that wait times result in this, and this is how long you should wait, and basically the conclusion was that it was at the point where it was unacceptable traffic impacts. Essentially. Thanks.
No further questions, councillors. Councillor Congerton.
Thank you for coming in today, and I hope I'm speaking loud enough, Bob. I'll keep having that dig all the time while I stand in front of this, Mr. Mayor.
Check Facebook in about 2 minutes. You'll probably know.
Could you tell me, in your opinion, is the entry and exit into Lake Farm exactly the same as the entry and exit into Belfin and or Marangaroo?
Unfortunately, I'm not aware of that intersection. I mean, I can look it up and...
Sorry, you would drive down Hepburn Avenue, either north direction or from the east direction, to enter into Lake Farm.
I'm sorry, Councillor. To be honest, I'd have to look it up to be able to just to be able to provide comment on that.
Thank you.
Perhaps the CEO might like to comment. He knows the area pretty well.
He knows the answer, Mr. Mayor. Get him to answer his own question.
To answer my own question,
to be
Bob.
fair, Councillor, you're probably going to slip into debate if you answer your own question.
Yes.
No, I'm not into a debate. I'm just going to explain the intersection structure.
Well, can we finish to see if there's any further questions for our current speaker?
I will.
Are there no further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now you can ask a question to the staff if you wish.
Thank you very much. To you, Mr. Coaten, could you please tell me the dual four-lane carriageway entry from Marangaroo to Hepburn Avenue and the dual four-way carriageway from Belfin into Hepburn, is it the same as the single entry carriageway into Lake Farm?
I think you've answered your own question in asking it, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Point of order, Mayor, if I could. I'm staring at a map now, and they're exactly the same. The off slip lane from Hepburn going into Belfin, which caters for thousands of vehicles every day,
well,
is
I think
the same.
Engineers, do you want to
is
say
the same
for next week, Councillor? That's when we debate.
Well, just further point of order, Mayor. You've allowed Councillor Congerton to look into
asked
this.
The question, but they've been answered.
Well,
city engineer just answered it. Someone who lives there just
can I
answered
ask then for a measurement from staff to go to for next meeting to look at the actual pull-off lane allocation from Hepburn into Lake Farm and also into Belfin then?
Can ask
an
whatever you
actual
want.
measurement.
Councillor McNamara, you got a question?
Mr. Mayor, and I sincerely hope that Bob is listening.
I'll check if you like.
Mr. Coaten, is it a fact that the 70-mile-an-hour speed limit currently on Hepburn Avenue has been asked by the community to be increased to 80, which will enhance the danger point at that particular junction? Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Coaten. There have been requests in the past for that speed limit to be increased above 70, that's correct.
No further questions, councillors. We'll go to the next speaker, which is Mr. Alkeel Al Barash, speaking against the recommendation and in support of the development application. Mr. Barash, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Akil Al Buraich. I'm the president of Al Tawheed Islamic Association. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words about our revised application to the proposed development in Well Lake Farm Retreat. After discussion with the staff in the Council Planning Department, the size and nature of our original proposed development has been reduced by about 50%. The reason for doing this was to minimize the risk of contamination to the groundwater, which I understand the outstanding issue under consideration. With regard to the disposal of the wastewater by the connection to the Water Corporation sewer network. I understand that the Water Corporation has not expressed any objection to the proposed system of wastewater deposit from the site. The stormwater runoff from the roof and the car park, which will be treated on site. I understand that this will be involved by filtering and nutrition stripping through suitable vegetation. The 50% reduction in the size of the building and the car park provide for the corresponding increase the area and the vegetation, which will be increase the ability of the inside treatment, and in doing so will greatly reduce the risk of contamination to the groundwater. On the issue of risk management, may I say with the greatest respect that the requirement of provide 100% guarantee of zero increase in the level of the risk to groundwater contamination is neither protect or reasonable, and I do not understand that to be as intention of acceptation of the Department of Waters. Water quality protection, note number 25. I will be corrected in the matter. Finally, we are doing everything possible to prevent groundwater contamination. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Kiley?
Akil, the issue of community purpose came up in May last year. You were claiming in May last year that it was community purpose building. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when we talk about community purpose, you're stating that this is effectively community purpose. Are you going to be having any call to prayer or anything like that from the building?
No. Even the time we use it is not time of the prayer, because the time of prayer is sitting 3 times a day. Our meeting is a different time. Even we renting the hall from the Swanshire for the last 25 years. We use it, and all our time you can see in the Swanshire there's a report what time we are renting from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. That's what we use, or 8 or 7 to 9 sometimes. Yeah.
So you've been renting the Alistavern Centre in Lockridge for the last 25 years.
Yes.
Now, have you had any traffic problems in all of that time?
No, we have no problem, and you can see from the Swanshire, the Shire, and we got the report. We have no problem.
Have you had any complaints from the Lockridge community about
never
noise, traffic issues?
No, we are as a small community. We don't do worship. In the beginning, the application was some mistake to word it as they say is a worship, and we did fix it in the next when we reverse the application.
No.
Yeah, we are community, and we've been there 27 years in Lockridge, Beechboro, and Ballajora. This is our area.
Now, you've been renting it for 25 years. In that time on this Sunday morning or Saturday morning, what do they actually do? You told me on the weekend. What do they actually do when you go drop the children off there? What?
We have Sunday. We have a school. It's been 20 years exactly. All our kids, they born here. They learn second language. Yeah, we teach them.
So it's a language class, effectively.
Yes, language class. Yeah.
But you would be doing the same thing at Lake Farm Retreat?
It's not. When we say language class, it is only for 20, 30 people, 40 people. This is maximum. Yeah, we don't have a school, just language class. Yeah.
There's never been any traffic problems, never any complaints from the Lockridge community in 25 years?
No, we never. You can't see if any complaint in the Shire about us. No.
Thank you.
Councillor Catalano, you next.
Oh, thank you. What is the sort of maximum number of cars that you expect to have on site?
Look,
let's say, at any one time, and how many times a year would you have that?
the whole year we don't have any problem. We have 10, 15 cars. This the whole year. We have special days. We have more than 15, 20 cars. Yeah, and it's not really, but only in a special occasion if we have someone die or something. This is something different.
Okay.
Yeah. But normal, our meeting is 10, 15 or 20 cars. This is normal. Yeah, and we have only 2 hours. And Thursday
2 hours.
night is mainly the meeting.
Okay. And special days, how many days are those a year?
There's 10 days a year. I did send, you have it in the report there. There's how many days, yeah. But there's only 10 days is a special days we have. We call Muharram. No.
Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you. Salaam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you for your presentation and coming back to council. I wanted to ask you, by memory, when you came to see us last time, you spoke about having the community events, and that's why you thought you might need up to 200 people.
Yeah.
But you will still have the events at this place?
Look, we have 3 communities. We connect with the other community. We use the one next to the women prison.
Mm-hmm.
This is our community. Now that they have traffic now because we are there now. And there's other community in 9 Junior Drive. We use them. But actually we are, as a community members, we no more than 20 cars or 30 cars. But when we join together, when we have only one place, this is the problem. Yeah.
Okay, so you will only, on those special days, you will only have a maximum of...
We used to have in special days, we all together. But
Yes.
now we have 3 places, 2 already established.
Okay.
We are only one left without place.
So where will you celebrate, like Idul Fitri?
We
and-
in Lockridge, we're renting from Swanshire.
So you will continue to rent
Yes,
that space
yeah,
for special days?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
Further question, Councillor Parry.
Just one very quick question, Mr. Mayor. How many members do you have in your association?
Look, about 50 as a members. Yeah.
Further questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rach.
Yeah.
Next speaker on this item, Mr. Ayat Al Shawai, I think it is, speaking again against the recommendation and in support of the application.
Correction, that was Miss. Good evening, respected councillors and members of the community. Sorry. My name is Atul Shawi. I'm an Australian Iraqi Muslim, born in Perth, raised in the city of Swan. And my childhood and adulthood was spent on the grounds of Alton Park Leisure Centre and the library, where I have a lot of memories, and whenever I drive past the centre, all those memories come back to myself. And what I remember there is the times I created, laughing, playing, imagining myself as a librarian in the future. I would assume that many of you would have memories in various locations in this pleasant community. This community gave us a space to envision our futures, to create wonderful memories, and to bring together diverse groups of people. My parents, who migrated from Iraq, wanted to raise their children with similar morals they were raised with. They wanted to instill the same values that were important to our culture. They expected that doing so would be a struggle, but they were proved wrong. We were taught morals at home, schools, and in the community. However, one more thing was missing. They needed a place to teach us our religion and to apply our teachings. It was also important for them to teach us our native language, which was Arabic. So just how they sent us to school to learn our ABCs, they sent us to Al Tawheed Islamic Association to learn Arabic, which is what the previous speaker highlighted. This enabled me to be fluent in Arabic and to be strong not in just English, but also in my mother tongue. I believe that being bilingual is an important addition to the society, as we live in a multicultural society. 2 of many religious values which Al Tawheed Islamic Association taught us were the importance of respecting people from all ages, races and religions, which mirrors the cities of Swan's value of respect. We were also educated and taught to stay away from things that would endanger our lives and the lives of those surrounding us and the community, such as drugs and violence, and that falls in with City of Swan's value of accountability. All the lessons were hosted in various centres in City of Swan, such as Alice Daveron Centre in Lockridge, which holds many sweet memories. However, as a community, we want to create more memories and in a place that is ours, a place that belongs to us and will represent us, a place that will not only be open to our Muslim community, but will be open to the larger community. The City of Swan's vision is one city, diverse places. And as a community, we have noticed this diversity from the various places of worship we drive past. I'm kindly requesting council members to consider the refusal for One Lake Farm Retreat in Ballajora and to allow us to become an addition to the diverse places of City of Swan. The community centre that would be beneficial not to this generation only, but to future generations. A place that would help to raise confident, bright and respectful Australians with the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Kiley.
Ms Shaw, you speak, and it might be a surprise to some people, with an Aussie accent. And while it is easier for us to understand you as opposed to your elders, do you think that affects people's impression of your religion, that people are speaking with an accent, or that they might be a little bit more difficult to understand?
No, not really, to be honest. The reason why many people don't believe that I was born here, maybe because of the way I dress or the way they expect me to speak in a certain way, or sort of kind of. But what was really important in raising myself and my parents raising me was the focus on both languages. So we would attend those 2 hours a week, Saturday, Sunday classes, and I was attending these classes ever since I was 4 years. So if you can see the impact that has on me, the fact that I learnt my second language, Arabic, was something that really increased my confidence and enabled me to speak to the elders in the community and to understand what was actually going on when there would be some meetings or would be there a small event that we would gather around. It would enable me to understand what was going on.
And just to follow on, you talked about the City of Swan being one city, diverse places. Has that been of comfort to you, knowing that that's been our motto as you've been growing up in the City of Swan?
Yeah, certainly. That is something that really, when I was writing this, I thought that this kind of motto really reflects what I'm talking about. And the thing that I love about this community is how diverse it is. And I mentioned that there are quite a lot of worship places or community, kind of groups around, and saying that City of Swan says that they are one place but diverse kind of communities, smaller little organisations, groups and religions, that really does increase my confidence, and that what makes me love City of Swan even more to live in and to, raise my future family in it.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Councillor Catalano.
Thanks. I wanted to ask you, if this wasn't approved, if you couldn't get your community established, what would that mean to you and to your community and to your community's future? What do you think what do you see would happen?
I mean, it would be quite devastating to not be able to have our own place, and that place would not just be open to us, obviously, it would be open to all members of the community who would like to learn about us, about our culture, about our religion, and about Arabic and what we do. And it would kind of affect our future, because we are currently seeing there's a lot of communities out there, but no communities being able to touch what Al Tawheed Islamic Association is touching, where they have raised generations and generations of, confident, bright, smart Australians that are able to, speak 2 languages, answer questions, and speak like how I'm doing right now, speak in, council chambers and so on. So I think it would have an effect on us, but obviously that we do have the community that's able to support us in a way. It's just when City of Swan and Al Tawheed Islamic Association is raising a person or raising a generation, that would be a superpower, in my opinion.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Henderson, you are on staff, so thank you very much. Councillor McNamara, speaker or staff? Do you just ask a question of Miss?
Thank you.
Joy? Thank you.
On the last occasion that you made an application for this facility, you presented the council with an activities timetable. Can you remember that?
I'm not too sure. I really can't answer that question because I don't know the timetable.
That's fine. I don't have an issue with that, with you not remembering. One of the things that jumped out at councillors, and particularly myself, And I speak in a strange language as well. A lot of these lads here don't even understand half of what I say. Bob does, he does. But basically the story is that the gentleman who spoke just before you said that you had now 3 particular areas that you assemble in on a weekly basis, whatever. Now, going back to the timetable, it said that in the Ramadan month there was approximately 200 attendees, 1.5 hours per day. 1 to 2 hours per day, and that would be for praying and for lectures. But where do you know where at this very minute that you perform those particular activities now, that you haven't got the facility that you applied for on the last occasion?
Yeah. So we haven't been able to celebrate quite a lot of events due to the fact that we don't have space, or a space that belongs to us specifically, and that's why we cause condensation in other places, which that kind of affects the areas that they are living into. For example, the place just off Reed Highway, just in Middle Swan, I think that's a suburb, and there's another place in Malaga, sorry. And what we're trying to do is we are kind of trying to separate that traffic, the condensation, and we do have limited noise in the area. So when we have a large amount of people, it's kind of hard to control traffic. We have in the past tried to control traffic by placing gentlemen outside wearing high-vis vests, lights to control the traffic situation, and it was a success, to be honest with you, because people would kind of listen to that and we would try to save our own place. And in regards to kind of having every occasion, we don't really have to celebrate every occasion. However, we would like to in the future celebrate every occasion if that space allows us to do so. I'm not too sure if I answered your question or no.
No, that's fine. That's excellent. Thank
just
you.
Make note, Ms. Shaw is not actually the applicant. The applicant is up next, so you might want to phrase those questions to the applicant, the next speaker, who might have a little bit more intimate knowledge of the activities that's listed on page 269.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Henderson, you have a question, staff? I think you're all right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Could staff advise me what's the number of male and female toilets per 100 people required for a place of worship?
Mr. Russell?
Unfortunately, I can't. I'm not a building surveyor, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to, but we can get the answer prior to next week. I would say, though, we're not dealing with 100 people. We're dealing with 50 people under the revised application.
No, I'm just looking for a number because there's 10 toilets being provided and I want to work out what the ratio is to see if it equals 50 people. Thank you. If I can get the answer.
Promise on. Thank you. Right, okay. One other speaker now is Mr. Latif Al-Barash, who is the applicant, speaking against the recommendation and in support.
Dear respected ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to first thank you for the opportunity to stand in front of you. It's truly a privilege and an honour for me. On my shoulders is a heavy burden because I have to represent the youth of my community, and it's a position that I'm unworthy of. My name is Latif Al-Baraich. I was born in 1996 in Subiaco, and I graduated with a bachelor's degree from Curtin University, and I'm currently studying a master's degree in Edikawan University. I mention this not to bring attention to my achievements, but just to say the fact that this is quite a norm among the youth of our community. We've got a lot to offer when it comes to the educational sector, different fields, and we're very passionate to give back to the wider Australian community. We don't see ourselves as something different or a community that's separate from the Australian community. We understand that Australia is a multicultural society, a multicultural country, and it takes pride in that, and we're just a portion of that. 2 years ago, we started a youth initiative, and because we realized there's a lot of Islamophobic threats, attacks, verbal and physical, given to the people of our community. And the reason for that is people are scared of what they do not know. So we decided 2 years ago to establish a youth program. Now the issue with this is we do it every week, but in a different center every time. We don't have a place of our own, so we have to rent Lockridge. Ask different community centres, can we use your place? We go to university halls, ask the student clubs, are we allowed to use your club rooms? And for 2 years we've been doing this, tackling issues faced by the wider Australian communities as well as within the youth themselves, mental health issues, encouragement for their education, the pursuit of education, the career opportunities that they have. As a result, in 2 years we've fed and taken care of 1,000 less fortunate people in the streets of Perth. And this is something small to what our capabilities are. We've done this through helping organisations such as Headspace, Salvation Army, and etc. And we aim to continue to do this. But what we've seen is our programs have opened the doors to everyone, regardless of their faith, their belief, their race. It's open doors, because people need to see who we are. Now, I might look like a 30-year-old, despite my age being 23, and I might look a bit different to the rest of the people in the room. And so when they see me, they do say, excuse me, what language do you speak? And I'm just like, oh, I'm just an Aussie, mate. You know, I hit that purposefully. I don't really talk like that, but just to put the Spanish in the work. But when they see me, don't recognize a person that's born here. Unfortunately, as it be so. But this is a society we live in, and it's important for us to engage in conversation. Once we engage in conversation, these barriers are broken, bridges are built. Now, the thing is, when I invite a friend over to a restaurant, it's nice, beautiful, great location. But it's not the same when I invite them to my own house. When it comes to my own house, a place that I have a privacy and a safe haven for me. Now, it builds better relationships, better bridges, stronger bonds. A community centre to us is like a house. Currently, we're using public property. A whole community centre that's not ours, but we're using the property. But we want to invite people to our house, to our place, so they can experience who we are, to meet who we are, to engage with us, ask questions about the misconceptions they have, the fears that they're facing. Do you guys really do this? Come on, watch us. You're welcome to participate with us. This is what we really want to do. This is the aim that we strive to do. For 2 years so far, and this is the youth perspective. It was just a small group of us that started with 5. Currently, we're 20 to 30 people. And we're just running around. Sometimes you have to use a park, just do a barbecue, make it fun. But these events is what we do. Indoor soccer activities at Kingsway, wherever we can find a booking. The issue with it is financial capabilities. We're a bunch of students. And availability of bookings. And I really appreciate the time you've given me. I thought I only had 3 minutes. I would have taken advantage of the other 2 minutes. But I guess...
Well, you've got 1 minute left, so you can...
Oh, perfect.
Got a bit of time up your sleeve.
But thank you so much for this opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions to Mr. Brash? Councillor Calano.
Yeah, I wanted to actually ask, so do you know much about what happened at SAT? Were you there?
No, I wasn't present.
You weren't? Okay. So I just wondered whether your community had been given some kind of idea that, this proposal that you're putting forward now was, going to be more appropriate, or...
So what's the lack of appropriation in it, like?
No, I just meant in terms of last time you couldn't get it passed,
Yep.
so that this time you think that
because
it's
of
got a better chance. And I just wondered if you had some
the
guidance
reason for
in
it?
terms of that. Yeah.
So the reduction of the size is we saw because the main issue was the 200 people in one place, the car park, quite a large car park, and we got quite optimistic. We got a big piece of land. We're like, there's many opportunities that we're missing out. We'd love to do it. Anyone would. But we understand we dropped it by 50%. Like we said, the other 2 communities that we mentioned, they're not our communities, but they have the same religion as us, so we utilize the same facility. So we go present to them. One of them is quite larger than the other, so when it comes to the large events, we would use that facility, which is the Malaga one. And we have done that, and I've done it in January with a special youth program. We invited an international speaker, opened doors to everyone, and it was quite a great experience. And so by the idea of reducing that size, focusing on the smaller programs, hopefully it can be acceptable.
Get over the hurdle.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Colley.
Latif, congratulations on all your achievements through university as well. I'm just wanting to know, so you have attended effectively like Lockridge Community Centre for the last 25 years or so? Well, no, 23 at least. Yeah. So you've been attending there as well?
Yeah, since I could walk, I guess. I learned I picked up the Arabic language from there. I've actively helped out as much as I can. It's something I grew up with all the children there. I know them personally. It's just our little community, but you can't hang your own picture on the wall. Unfortunately, it's not our place. Thank you,
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you for the presentation. Can you just tell me are you aware of the costings for the rental for this? For the 3 facilities?
I'm not exactly sure, no.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Are they donations that come in from the members of each of those 3 communities? That pay
donations, sorry, my apologies. But donations are not compulsory.
Yep.
So sometimes it's just mainly our pockets, whatever we can. But because we understand the different financial capabilities of different people, we just say, if you can donate, please do donate. If not, which is most often, we take it from our own pockets.
So weekly you'd pass around like a normal church?
No, we don't do that. It's just, This is the account. If you want, you can donate.
You just bank into it?
Just give it to this person if you want. And it's not a great turnout, but it's what we use.
So that's how you cover the cost of the rental weekly?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Councillor McNamara, I think you had some questions of the applicant.
Mr. Albrecht, thank you very much. Look, first and foremost, let me say that it's not up to me or any councillor to tell you lads or anybody that's making an application for anything how to spend their money or how to build or how not to build or what to do. So all we can do is deal with the case in front of us in the manner that we're elected to do. The question I want to ask you is, now that you've reduced the actual concept from being a Ben-Hur down to a reasonable size, would it not be in your organisation's better interest to do what? I'll give you an example. My business is in Townsend Street in Malaga. To the right of me, within 500 metres, I have 5 different denominations of religions. To the left of me on the same street, I have 4.
Yeah.
That's 9 within a kilometre.
Yeah.
All of them either own or are renting their buildings.
Okay.
And it is much cheaper to do that. They have lots of parking space. The City of Swan provided on-road parking in Malaga. They do absolutely heaps of work in Malaga, the City of Swan does, from the point of view of facilitating every single type of religion. I'm sorry for using the word type, but every single method or denomination of religion that can be, and also businesses.
Just point of order, Mayor. Sorry, Councillor McNamara. Is there a question in this?
You need to ask a question.
The question is, Mr. Mayor, and I've already asked the question, would it not be in their best interest, financially or otherwise, I've asked you this question, to actually consider purchasing or renting a property, even next door to my business, and you'd be very welcome.
Well, it'll be great if we can have that as an additional place, but we've already purchased the land, and it's something that we've already invested in with our hearts. The community is excited for it since we purchased it. It's a great location because of the different communities that are willing to come. Some are willing to drive distance just to attend. We've already invested emotionally into the place, so it holds more than just the physical location right at this present moment. But thank you.
Mr. Brash. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you for your presentation. When the property was bought, and you may seek some support in terms of the answer, did the real estate agent advise you of the limitations and the use that could be put for this land?
I'll take your advice. And,
Yeah, actually, when they bought the land, you can see the offer exception. It was the worship. When we bought it as a worship place and to be as a community, and the real estate said yes, we can be.
So the real estate agent advised you that you could have a place of worship there.
Yeah, you got the application, you got the offer exception. Is very clear there.
That was your application, but I'm talking about
Yes.
when you bought the land.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to be clear then, given that you've seen the report and there are restrictions around the ability to do that, would you feel aggrieved if the agent had actually given you bad information?
No, agent didn't give me wrong information. I did went to the Shire, and I did ask for what's the zoning and what we can do as a community, and they said can be with the condition.
Yes, of course you can apply, but
Yeah.
okay.
That's what I said.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Congerton.
Hi, Bob. If I'd like to ask you, there are two main objections to approving an application for your organisation, and one sits around traffic, and the other one sits around water. So the water's been addressed by the department and by our officers, but what hasn't been addressed is traffic.
With pleasure.
And what I'd like to ask you is, because I can't find anywhere in the documents that have been supplied where there are any restrictions in relation to ingress and egress timing for the various days. Now, I know there was something supplied in respect to the number of people that can visit the site, and I'd be happy to accept anyone's comments in relation to if I've missed it somewhere. But the traffic issues of banking up in Lake Farm predominantly sit around early morning peak hour traffic, evening peak hour traffic, and school runs. So what I'd like to ask you, my question, is that would there be an acceptance to a limitation of times for the subject site? And if so, what times would be acceptable to your organisation?
I'll answer one part and then I'll let my father continue. But we've got 50 cars and the programs mainly run at night. So they're not... The 50 car is the maximum car base that we have with the revised edition. First of all, it's at night time is mainly the events, so from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. There's no mid-morning rush, there's no evening rush, it's all past that. School rush is all finished. At that time you can drive by the property, you'll see it's very empty, it's quite a peaceful drive as well. You might find the odd speed camera there as well, just for the heck of it. But it's quiet, that's what I'm trying to say. It's really quiet that the availability of a speed camera means that there's an open road that you can speed on. If it was tightly packed with tightly packed congestion, there's no point of a speed camera. But 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock is mainly the event that we would do. Sunday is the school program that we wish to run, which is not a school, it's a class. But Sunday also the traffic is very empty. Yeah. Is that right?
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you. Further questions, councillors?
Can we just add further comments? If that's fine.
Quick
Regarding
one.
the traffic?
Just for the traffic, I think we don't have any issues. When we went to the SAT, I think first they asked for to do the report for traffic. After they read our report, they said there's no issues. You don't need any consulted or any traffic. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillors, just to reiterate, the reasons we got this back is to consider the two reasons for refusing it last time and to consider whether the changes have been made are significant for us to change our mind on that decision. All the other stuff was fantastic and really good, but at the end of the day, that's what we'll need to consider. So thank you, Mr Rash. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us now to 4.1, the proposed excision of Crown Reserve 43065, lot 11928 Central Avenue, Hazelmere, and Mr Greg Rowe from the Rowe Group speaking in support of the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mr Rowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors. I'm speaking in regard to your item 4.1 for next week's council agenda. Mr Mayor, since the council officer report has now been finalised and the recommendation presented, rather than take more of your time in terms of going over the matters that are in the report, I don't propose to add anything more that's not been adequately and well covered in the report. We do ask you next week to endorse the recommendation and respond to the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage accordingly. With that said, Mr Mayor, I'm more than happy to attempt to answer any questions that elected members may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr Rowe. Councillors, any questions of Mr Rowe?
Thanks, everyone. Thank you again.
Do we need to go behind closed doors for those? Deputations? Okay.
It was outside the door. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. May I just say the CEO of Swansea Youth Centre, Mr. Michael Curry-Costa, is here. I'm not sure if it's in regard to speaking on behalf of Adele Stewart. I didn't say Adele Stewart wasn't coming. I said that Mr. Luke Bolton wasn't coming. Who advised you of that?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. Mr. Stewart was an apology just before the start of the meeting. I'm not aware of Mr. Bolton's situation, but I think what Councillor Scannon's just highlighting is the CEO of Swan City Youth Services here, so if Council has any...
Yeah, I was told that Michael was coming to answer any questions about the homelessness motion and to address Council if he wanted to. That's what I was told by message earlier today.
Excuse the dress stand, I had an accident with a young person earlier today that has made my suit less than presentable. Yeah. First of all, thank you for allowing me to come back. I presented the other week, as you know. This is just follow-up if you've got any questions in regards to the motion. And thank you, Councillor Scanlon, for putting it forward. Homelessness has definitely become a problem in the Midland area, especially in the youth area. We are now seeing more and more emergency relief, and I know we're not the only one. I know that Adele has also got issues, especially Indigo. They're at capacity just about from the sounds of it. When I was speaking to Dream Builders about their nightly meal service, they sound like they're at capacity as well, as certain others. Youth Futures have just reapplied for another emergency relief package, which hopefully they will get because that provides meals, as do we. So I think any support the council could give us advocating to the state government would be muchly appreciated. We are seeing greater numbers every day now, and now that the weather's changing and we're starting to move closer to winter, it's going to become worse.
Thank you, Michael. Well, obviously, Councillor Scanlon, you've got questions, so...
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I do. Thank you so much for coming in and for waiting all that time to speak to us. I do appreciate it. My question is, do you have an indication of numbers of homeless youth that are coming through the centre?
It's a challenging question because it depends on your definition of homeless. So at the moment, to give you an example, we've got 315 clients on our program that are registered with us that are dealing with emergency relief. So emergency relief can mean anything from they're couch surfing with friends and sleeping in different places every night, or they're truly homeless and they're living on the streets. There are also those that are actually jumping from Department of Child Protection property to property and so on. On top of that, that's just the emergency relief department. When you start talking about also the drug and alcohol counselling service we've got as well, there's probably about... I don't know what the numbers are from the top of the head, but I think we're sitting on just in excess of 100 now that are either at risk or at extreme risk. I'm not sure. Mark, do you remember the data I sent through the other day? No, but it'd be close to that. Now, most of those are either in the class of being homeless or are in the environment where living at home is actually more of a danger than not being at home.
Thank you. My further question is, have you seen an increase in these numbers?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
About a 30% increase.
30%, thank you. And are you able to service the... actually, I know you're not. I know you're not able to service the number of people coming through, so it's a redundant question. But my question is, where do you send those youth that you are unable to service?
There's nowhere.
You send them back onto the streets. There's nowhere for them to go.
We're supplying sleeping bags at the moment, and I know other groups now are as well.
Okay.
So we have a sleeping bag washing service now, where they come in and give us their sleeping bag they've been sleeping in for a couple of weeks. We wash it, give them another one to take with them.
Thank you. Do you know where they sleep?
Yeah, we know the spots, as does every other service in town. We go and visit when we can.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, my first question has been answered. That is, are you providing any actual short-term crisis accommodation? I guess the answer is no.
We don't, but we will refer and work with other services where we can. What we are trying to do most of the time now is actually find other relatives.
Yes.
Grandparents, uncles, aunties, somewhere safe for these young people to sleep.
Okay. So my next question then is, do you have... I know this is a very vexed and difficult question. Do you have any ideas for models of short-term crisis accommodation that would actually work?
I'm actually modelling on that at the moment. So I'm actually putting some models together at the moment just to see if it's feasible. Indigo Junction have great facilities at the moment. They're now at the stage where I think they've got a massive wait list. Temporary accommodation, it depends on what your definition of it is. I mean, most of the emergency accommodation services provides around 3 months. Having something shorter time than that, maybe a couple of weeks, where you might be working with them until you can get them other accommodation, that's probably more feasible, but you'd need a space. So.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a quick question. From the last time we met, have you had any further updates from the state government in regards to the tender process for funding for this important issue?
Not yet. We are talking. I'm now in talks with the Mental Health Commission to see if we can get some help there. At this stage, we've had a couple of our grants renewed, which is exciting. It still leaves us with a shortfall that we're trying to manage. And I've also got meetings now with community policing. It's part of the Department of Police. And I'm also meeting again with Mental Health Commission to further discuss issues we've got. Because the other issue we're now seeing, and other services will tell you the same thing, is there's a fair majority of these young people that are actually homeless or living rough that have mental health issues as well as everything else that they're encountering.
So I think Mike had a couple of quick questions. We can run off and knock on the doors of the big house in West Perth, but at the end of the day, it's getting them out here is probably going to be more influential than us rattling at the top end of Melbourne Street. So who are the key people within the sector that we need to drag out here?
Department of Communities, straight away. They're probably the big one. If anything as well, which would be good, is housing. Department of Housing, because the wait list to get young people into the units and things like that is drastic. We had an example the other day, a young lady who's just turned 18 has taken on a unit, and we haven't confirmed this yet, but the rumour is that the person that living directly across from her, who keeps peeking out of his window, is a sexual predator, a convicted sexual predator. So we don't know how true that is yet, but that's the rumour we're hearing back, because there's a shortage of property. Now, when she challenged that with Department of Housing, she was basically told, well, if you don't take that one, you're going back to the bottom of the list, which is another couple of years' wait. So Department of Housing could actually help in a big way. And it needs to be something like Indigo Junction. That's what they need. They need venues like that. So if Department of Housing are willing to support that initiative, it'd be great. And the police, because we can actually resolve a lot of their issues as well.
Beautiful. Thanks, Mike.
It'd be good to have the Premier down to have a look as well. I think he needs to see some of the issues.
He might be a bit harder to get.
Yeah.
Councillor Johnson, another question?
To comment, there is an online register of offenders of that nature that you
we
could
haven't
use.
looked yet because we don't know his name.
Okay. Well, you don't need to know the person's name. They will tell you if there is an offender there. You don't need to enter the name.
Yeah, and that's because it's not our area. We'll look at it and we'll talk to the young person, and we went to the Department of Housing and spoke to them about it. We've now actually put that forward to other services to help them within Department of Child Protection, because they will manage part of it because she's got a baby as well. So it's a challenge for us because there's so much we've got to do. So my case manager involved in that will probably be looking into that at the moment. Bear in mind, she's only just moved in a week ago. She was given it 2 weeks ago, and she's only just managed to move in. We helped her find the furniture.
All the information's online.
Yeah. It's a matter of time and staffing.
Okay. So. Further questions, councillors? Beautiful. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks. Can I just add one last thing?
Yep.
To yourself, Mr. Mayor, and the councillors, you guys have been fantastic in the donations since I last spoke. It's been a massive help. Like even to the extent that Councillor Richards, I think you dropped off some glasses, just some cups and glasses and that the other week. That all went that day. So those sort of donations help us as much as money because we can utilise that straight away. So I just wanted to say a very big thank you for that support. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, now that brings us down to item 3.4 is the Dayton Shopping Centre and Mr. Glenn Retallick speaking in support of the proposed motion.
Hi, councillors. Thank you for listening today. I'm a resident of Dayton and here today to bring awareness and support to Councillor Kylie's motion for the Dayton Shopping Centre clean-up. Thank you for the councillors that have already responded to my earlier email from this week. Dayton is a suburb in its infancy, and it's important to lay a foundation of what we accept and what we walk past in our suburb. We have had a lot of new residents move into our suburb, and they not only see a mess, they see inaction. A central gathering part of Dayton is Walter Day Park and the new Dayton Community Centre, and soon we'll be very lucky to have the new wetland park. All these fantastic community points are flanked by the derelict, unkept site, which leaves an unwanted impression on anyone who visits our great suburb and a depressing sight for those that live there. Local residents have also reported seeing kids playing in this area and exploring in likelihood what would be an unsafe site with snakes and hazardous materials. This issue is out of my ability to action change, but I believe within yours. Can you please take this motion seriously and explore all possible avenues for resolution? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Retallick. Questions, councillors?
Glenn, thanks for coming along and waiting for this moment such late into the evening.
Councillor Coley, you can ask a question. Thank you.
I will, Mayor. I'll get to it. I'd just like to thank people for coming along at 8:30 at night and sitting and waiting all this time. Have you seen people on site or children on site, you said?
Not in the vicinity, not myself in the area, just other residents that I've spoken to have reported it.
And how long have you lived in the area?
I've lived in Dayton since 2016.
And do you think it's having an effect on property values or investment in the suburb?
I wouldn't currently invite my friends to live where I live.
You wouldn't, you said?
No.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Further questions? Okay. Councillor Catalano?
How big an issue do you think this is in the Dayton community?
I know recently we had a meeting attended by yourself and Councillor Kylie, and it was attended by about 30 residents, and it was strongly expressed by everyone there that it's a current issue to the point where it looks like they're going to be setting up a ratepayers association to express this along with other issues in the area. And again, we're a very new suburb. I realise that out there, and if this is what we're getting at the beginning, I'd hate to see where it goes from here.
All right, and can I just ask one other question? What sort of things do you think could be done with the site? I mean, do you think, I know the shops have gone up in another area now, so do you still think that that should be a shopping centre site, or would you, think something else could go there, just for your opinion?
In my opinion, I don't think it's suitable to be a commercial site anymore, just to how it's flanked by residential properties that would be backing onto that, and their view would probably be of generators and bins. So personally, I wouldn't want to live there.
So you'd prefer it to be housing?
Housing or another space.
Like a public open space?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Retallick, you are aware of action the city has taken to date against the landowner and administrator to have this place cleaned up?
Yeah, that's been expressed by Councillor Kiley, but I just came to, again, put my support behind the motion and express any action to be taken.
Okay, and you're aware that currently it's zoned retail, so to change of use would have to go through a whole planning process?
Yes, I am aware.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions, councillors? Okay, that brings us to...
Mayor, if I may...
one question to staff, yeah. Okay, Councillor McNamara, you got a question to staff?
To whichever staff member it is. This is private property.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yes.
And do we have any control of what businesses do with their money or with their situation, except ask them to keep the place tidy?
Mr. Tan.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, as indicated in the report, we have endeavoured to try to get, we have prosecuted the previous owner, got fined, but they are in liquidation, and we have...
Yeah, I'm just about to... Mr. Tan, just remember this is a confidential report, so I'd be careful where you go with it. Might be worth questioning
My
Mr.
apologies.
Tan outside this chamber. Okay. Councillor Henderson, I believe you had a question of Mr. Retallick.
No, Mayor, I realise we've come to the end of our deputations, but I'd ask Council's indulgence to hear from the Grape Growers Association,
Next on the list.
Mr. Kevin Pedersen,
Let's go
on
next
item
on my list.
C3.3.
Next on my list. It's next on my list. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Sorry for making you wait so long.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. With regard to item C3.3 on the agenda for the purchase of water allocation from the Swan Valley for use in parks and recreation, I think in other parts of the Shire, we strongly object. First of all, I'm sure that all councillors are aware of the importance of the Swan Valley to us all, to the state, as a unique place, so close to the city, where people can recreate, where grape growers can ply their trade as farmers and produce those wonderful grapes that we all enjoy eating, hence the waistline that I have. But we strongly object to the use of, to the removal of any water from the Swan Valley for use outside of the Swan Valley Zoned B area, which is the horticulture producing area of the valley. The area only exists because of agriculture and the resultant ambience which the state government has identified as being extremely important as a tourist attraction for the state. The city, I know, have supported the proposals of the present government in the Kabelki report and the pending Swan Valley Planning Act. The taking away of water from this area will reduce further the amount of production in the area because, simply put, grapes can't grow without water, or certainly table grapes can't grow without water. We're already under pressure from the Nangara Mound Management Plan, which is apparently going to be produced shortly, and the suggestion there is that there be a 10% reduction by the Water Authority in growers' allocation of water, so that further squeezes the amount of available water. But once this water disappears from Area B, we've got less production going on. The present Swan Valley Planning Act objective for the prime horticultural area of the valley has an objective, the provision of water for viticulture and horticulture and the discouragement of other activities that have high water demands. we are faced with those other activities that have high water demands. I ask that the city, if they wish to take water for this, might reconsider that proposal and look for alternatives than using precious water on parks and recreation anywhere. You're already doing that in Allenbrook, I believe, with artificial turf surfaces and that sort of thing. The 2017 City of Swan meeting of electors, motion 27 was that the City of Swan not compete for Mirrabooka and Leederville water sources. That is the purchase of water from these aquifers that could be used in Swan Valley horticulture. This motion was carried by majority vote and later rejected by council. We again ask you not to compete with Swan Valley farmers for water allocation. I did mention looking for other sources of water, and alternative water sources are being investigated by the Water Authority with managed aquifer recharge projects and workshops run by the Department of Water. And the final point I would make is that even although the use of water just outside the boundary of the Area B might appear to be something that is needed by the city, it will open the doorway to other people to buy water out of Area B and use anywhere else in the state that there is an aquifer equivalent to the Leederville or Mirrabooka. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Questions, councillors? Councillor Kyle, I think your hand was up first.
Kevin, are you familiar with the amount of water that we're looking at potentially purchasing?
No, I'm not. I believe that that's confidential.
Yes, it is a confidential item.
That's probably the point I was trying to make. Are you familiar with the fact that, or any other details about the actual original motion or report from council? Obviously not, because it's confidential.
It's confidential.
Thank you. I take on board all that you're saying here. I think probably that's the point I needed to make, but thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillors, that takes us to the end of deputations. So we're just going to run through the items for any alternative motions and reasons for. First cab off the rank is 13.5, which is Ellenbrook Security Patrols. Councillor Jones. Possible amendment. 13.6 is the Midland Activity Centre Design Guidelines.
Mr. Mayor, I've already got one in. It just hasn't been noted here. I sent it in on Saturday.
Okay, Councillor Johnson's already got one in also on 13.7, which is the Midland Oval Redevelopment Urban Guidelines. Any other ones? Okay, 13.8 is the Guildford Hazelmere Local Area Plan.
Amendment, Mayor.
So Councillor Kiley will be removing that for an amendment. Councillor Johnson's got one in on 13.9. The next one is 3.2, the Local Structure Plan for Lakes Road, Hazelmere. 3.3 is the proposed subdivision of the northeast of Cranwood Crescent Vivash.
Yeah, I've got an alternate motion for that, Mr. Mayor. Plan B.
Councillor Kiley has one in already on 3.4 for the State Administrative Tribunal for...
Can I please ask a question in relation to that item?
Which one?
3.4.
3.4, yes, you could.
In my still broadcasting it fairly? Yes. Sorry, Bob, I didn't have the mic on. The past experience of council of some 16 years was that if a item for award came up and any councillor was going to put forward a motion, amendment or otherwise, that they would contact the ward councillors and advise them this was the case. The Councillor Kylie's now got an alternative motion already received that the three of us have no idea what it is.
Option 2.
Well, but my point, sorry, I don't know what your motion is, but what I am asking for, Mr. Mayor, is the protocol of discussing it with the ward members still in play, because I need to know the playing ground that I'm in, and if the playing ground is that we can simply just go ahead and lob in a motion against either Midland or Altone and or Guildford Midland and not have a discussion with those ward councillors, then that's fine, because then it's an open playing field. That's what I want to know.
I don't think we actually have a written protocol.
Well, the protocol is, Mr. Mayor, ward councillors have priority on any alternative motion.
Exactly right.
You understand the question that I'm asking?
Yes, I do.
Understand.
Right.
I would also probably suggest a matter of respect also
That's
to
all I'm
discuss
asking.
with your ward councillors.
I wasn't aware that there was any obligation on councillors. No one's told me
told
since I've been on council that
There you go.
effectively I've got to discuss with. I just hadn't. I was aware of the rule that the ward councillor takes, but that's yeah. Maybe we can discuss that later. I mean, I'm
That'd be
happy
great.
to,
It would be
yeah,
great.
Happy to do that.
I'm
And if I
happy
could,
to
Mayor,
discuss it.
I'm fully aware that if a motion came in by either of the Whiteman ward councillors that it would precede mine, so I'm fully aware of that anyway. So, and wasn't aware also of any other protocol that existed on council.
It was always a courtesy. Okay, councillors.
It was in place, and I'd like to see that brought back because it's a common courtesy amongst all councillors.
Exactly, I agree. No, we don't need a question. We've had one question. You're going to move on, councillors. 4.1 is the excision of the Crown Reserve of Central Avenue, Hazelmere. No one. 1.7 is Councillor Scanlon. 3.4 is Councillor Kylie.
I have an amendment to that as well.
On 3.4?
Yeah, which we've had a discussion with Councillor Scanlon today.
On 1.7? And you discussed it with Councillor Scanlon? We will do. Okay, 3.4. Councillors, any...
Just a point, I might change the motion before when it comes back to council, Mayor.
Okay, so you're going to withdraw for an amendment?
Potentially.
Okay, 3.3.
2.1.
Yeah, hang on, I've got 3.3 as deputations, and then we go to the rest. Okay, 3.3, councillors, which is the rescission motion, which we'll have to deal with. 2.1 is the petition for seniors membership discount. Councillor McNamara. 3.1 is the proposed amendment number 186 local planning scheme for 2 properties in Bullsbrook. None. 3.5 is the proposed garage addition over with driveway in Victoria Street, Guildford. 3.6 proposed 2-storey single house, Johnson Street, Guildford. Councillor Kylie for... Yeah, to do what? 3.7 is the proposed extension to rear access of existing house in Rosella Circle, Balladura. None. 3.8 is the statutory planning decision on delegated authority. 4.2 is the proposed dedication of proportional land of sale as a road for Lloyd Street, Midland. 4.3 is the revocation of management orders ceding of freehold land to the City of Bayswater.
Mr Mayor, one quick thing about 4.3. I forgot to hand in an impartiality form in that. My grandparents live across the street, so I just want to hand that in, Mr Mayor.
Okay, we'll get that in. Okay, 5.1 is the list of accounts paid. 5.2 is the financial management report for January 2020. 5.3, budget adjustments. 5.4 is the budget review. 6.1 is the compliance audit return. Then we have the other ones, which are all the proposed motions from councillors C1.1 through 1.6. Then we have the confidential items, councillors. Is 3.1 is the property divestment portion of Banara Road, Caversham. 3.2 is Arts in Ellenbrook conditional grant. And last is 3.3 for Councillor Colley, which is a revocation motion to deal with.
Now looking to first see 1.2 the following meeting.
And Mr Mayor, if I could also just let you know that I'd like to defer C1.1 also. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Councillor Keller.
Did you please withdraw 13.9? Sorry,
Councillor Johnson's already done it. Okay. Councillors are now going to close the meeting, and we're just going to go behind closed doors.